This program was recorded on Monday, December the 16th, in the year of our Lord, 2013. The opinions expressed by the participants in the following program do not necessarily represent that of this station or its management. From the John DeVita Recording Studio, located in an undisclosed and clandestine location on the great northwest side of our fair city of Chicago, we once again are pleased to be presenting yet another edition of our monthly roundtable panel discussion show, Meet the Chicago Historians. Today we have submitted for your approval our last program of the year, being the month of December. This is our special Christmas holiday show. Now here's the guy who started it all, John DeVita.
Thank you, Rich. From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Meet the Chicago Historians on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Monday, December the 16th, the year 2013. Today, the panel will be talking about Christmas as we remember it, and, of course, much more. So sit back and enjoy Meet the Chicago Historians. And to start today's broadcast, here's our announcer, Rich Lane. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, John. Let's move right ahead, and here's our panel moderator, Red Ryan, Jack Ryan.
Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much on this lovely day. Well, we can definitely say winter is here. As a matter of fact, the middle of winter seems to have come in ahead of the beginning. Wouldn't you say,
I think we're shaping up for an old-fashioned winter, either cold or snow.
Yeah, it's usually I remember a typical winter in Chicago as being some snowfall. Then around the first of the year, you start getting your really cold weather. But now this has got it all at once. What do you think? We're sitting around here with Rich Lang, you just met, our announcer who has a dramatic background. Do you do those radio
old-time radio shows?
What do they call them?
Those were the days radio players, right? Reading from scripts and doing sound effects.
Is that affiliated with the old group from? Was it
Chuck Shaden?
Chuck Shaden. Couldn't remember his name.
Chuck Shaden was the one who started it all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is he still around, or?
Oh yeah, but he's retired.
I mean, retired.
He's been retired about 4 years now.
Uh-huh. And what do you do? What any particular characters you like doing, or?
Well, I always like Frank Nelson.
Yeah. Why was I just
the Jack
thinking of
Benny
him too?
show?
Yeah.
But I do a Bickerson and anything.
Excuse me, are you the man at the information booth? No, I'm selling kisses, like that.
That's classic.
Yeah.
He did so well from going radio to television.
Mm-hmm. Just saw him on an old Lucy show the other day.
Yeah.
And Tom McKenna, my good friend for years, and you're sitting right here, big as life.
Hello, everyone. John's our moderator, Jack Ryan's longtime friend, all the way from kindergarten.
We've done a lot of things together. I know. I think about it. A lot of firsts. Worked together a couple of times. Boy Scouts, altar boys, softball, basketball. We're training at the boys' club with the weights. Tom even went with us on our honeymoon. That's how good friends we are.
No comment.
That's while I remember the toast that I made at your, I was best man at John's wedding, and I got up and I said, John and I have done almost everything in our lives. Either John did it first and then I did it, or I did it and John did it. We went to kindergarten together. We went to the same grammar school. We went to the same high school. We played on the same sports teams. John joined the police department. I joined City College. Yeah. John joined the police department. I joined the police department. Either everything that he's done, I've done, or everything that I've done, he's done. But if you think that I'm going to get married just because you got married, you're crazy.
Yeah,
but I did take the plunge a few years later, and have been
eventually gave in,
and have been happily married now for over 20 years.
Yeah. God bless it. Time does roll right along. I know that for sure. And to Tom's right is Bennett Cerf, and next to him, his right is Al Opitz, resident chemical man. And I don't mean anything illegal, right?
can never tell.
That depends, yeah. No, I'm talking about you have a chemical or chemical engineer by trade.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah, no, I worked for, well, I did more mechanical engineering than chemical, but
Yeah.
it's the same. Basically, I'm smarter than a mechanical engineer, that's all.
Okay. And we're going to be talking about Christmas the way we remember it. And before we get to that, though, we usually get to our little discussion about what we call recent history, current events. Before that, though, if you will please indulge me a little time. I have a recording. This group exists because of the old radio station WJJG, which was Joe Gentile's station. Joe, who made his fortune selling automobiles in Barrington. Was that a Plymouth dealership?
Chrysler Plymouth.
Chrysler Plymouth, right. And he was the one Chet Kopic dubbed the Baron of Barrington, and it stuck pretty well. But he not only was he wealthy, but he had this, bought the station. He shared it with everybody. WJJG, which were his initials, Joseph J. Gentile. You could call a show there, and no matter what you wanted to talk about, you got on. You weren't pushed away, or well, as long as you kept your language decent, which we had a few people we had problems with, but I was not that I was just involved as a caller in those days. But through that, we're all here today, and we're continuing this show, which this show goes back over 20 years, doesn't it, John? Yep. So it's continuing. And the station was sold recently. Joe passed away a little over 2 years ago, and all of this original programming went by the wayside, and we're trying to keep it going, some of them anyway. But anyway, before we get to that,
This program, Meet the Chicago Historians, originated through the facilities of WJJG, and it was through several of the people that we worked with that gave me the idea of doing this show. And of course, our studios in Berkeley were not big enough to handle as many people as we have here in the John DeVita Broadcast Center. So what I did is I had an ISDN line installed from the studios of WJJG in Berkeley here to the John DeVita Broadcast Center in Norwich, and we did for many years a live remote broadcast of Meet the Chicago Historians up until October the 10th, the year 2011, when Joe passed away.
Mm-hmm. We were doing a show the day he passed away, too.
Yes, we were. We were at the Fire Museum of Greater Chicago.
Remote.
We were doing a remote there, and Dr. Wayne Chekowitz, about 12:30 in the afternoon, he called me while we were on the air, and he says, "John, Joe's dead." And that was the saddest day of my life after my parents. I thought a lot of Joe. Joe did a lot for me. And to this very day, as I stand here with tears in my eyes, I miss Joe.
Mm-hmm. Now, he's a guy, it seemed he wasn't really easy to know at first. He seemed a little standoffish, maybe a stranger, but tell me how many times he said to me, "You Irish?" I don't like that. Most of all like that. But eventually, though, we got to talking, and of course, we know a little bit about Loyola University, because Tom and I were graduates of St. Rita, and the championship team they had in 1963, John Egan was the senior, I believe he was a senior that year too, wasn't he? He was one of the starters on the team that won the national championship, and he was like 4 years ahead of us in school. So since Joe was the Loyola man and the St. Ignatius man, that kind of melted things, and we got to be, hold on a conversation pretty well. So, and not that I knew.
Well, plus Joe made a lot of charitable contributions, major charitable contributions, I know, to Loyola and St. Ignatius and many other worthy causes. He was a true humanitarian. I mean, people that they'll see his name on some. I believe his name is on the gym at Loyola. I believe, isn't it?
And also
at St. Ignatius. So that's the man that we're talking about. You know, you can connect a name with a face with a history.
We were driving by there one time. I was with a young female recruit working the public housing. She says, "Oh, the Gentile Center." And I said, "No, not a Gentile, it's Gentile." And he was a genteel man in every sense of the word.
I'll tell you something. At St. Ignatius, it's the Joe Gentile Gymnasium, and then At one time, they were talking about destroying our Holy Family Church, which is next door to St. Ignatius, and Joe donated a lot of money to save that church. And then Our Lady of Pompeii was another church that was slated to be destroyed, and once again, he saved that church also. And at Loyola, there's the Joe Gentile Sports Center, and I have been there many times watching the Ramblers play basketball. And many times I'd pick up Joe at the studios, take him all the way down to Loyola. We watch the game, and then bring him back home. So,
Well, some years back, there was some talk of closing St. Ignatius.
that's right.
And two St. Ignatius alum were very active in getting it funded. And one was Joe Gentile, the other was Bob Newhart.
That's right.
And now regentrification has set in, and they're back. The neighborhood's back.
What's always interesting is see old photographs in that area, and then, maybe last 10 years ago, it was essentially nothing there. They tore everything down, and now it's starting to get revitalized. So it's quite an interesting area.
Well, the whole city, if you go back 30 years, you'd say this city is shot. There were a lot of complaints that they've overbuilt. They have too much commercial space downtown. But all of a sudden, the commercial spaces became condominiums.
Yeah.
Old warehouses became lofts, and they love the heavy floors they have and all.
I was in one warehouse years ago, and
A what?
warehouse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not one of your places. And I noticed the beams in the ceiling. They're like 12 by 20-inch wood beams. It's unbelievable. I don't know how they made those things. I guess they must have been laminated because I can't see anything being that thick.
How old are they? Then we got to be
That was probably turn of the last century.
probably obviously post fire, right?
It had almost have to be, yes.
Yeah, right around there. That's the Chicago fire was 1871.
Correct.
Yeah. So
It's amazing how many people are living in and near the Loop now compared to 20, 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah. If you went to, say,
Permanent
1969, 70, 73, when I worked down there, nighttime, everyone would want to go on home. It was like a ghost
Right,
town.
that was another time where you talked about neighborhoods, that they're through, they're dead, it's over with, and not only it wasn't that true, it was the direct opposite. They came back stronger than ever. I mean, the Loop, the South Loop, River North, anybody that really hasn't driven around the central part of the city of Chicago in a while is really in for an awakening, because those neighborhoods, I know the DePaul area, I remember when John and I went to St. Rita, they used to hold the Catholic League basketball championships at the old Alumni Hall at DePaul. I mean, in those days, in the 60s, you took your life into your hands going into that neighborhood. I mean, it's hard to believe. But now, I mean, that area, as a matter of fact, in the 60s, you could have bought the entire block for what you pay for one condo in that area now. It's really amazing.
Well, the same thing is true around Wrigley Field.
Right.
Houses there one time were $4,000. Now you're lucky you can touch it for $400,000. It's changed considerably. And I had a guy I worked with have you ever noticed the building with I used to have a Budweiser sign. I'm not sure what's up there now. It has painted on the top of the building anyway. And he was getting like $40,000 a year in rent on that thing. I'm not sure what they're getting now. I could presume it got jacked up a little bit since that.
Like everything else.
Yeah.
Like everything else. So.
But what's sort of interesting is the fight between the so-called we call enthusiasts that are across the street,
The rooftop
people and all that stuff. And you look at, for a losing team, they got a hell of a big turnout. I go on a bus at 10 o'clock in the morning to go to someplace or other down, by the Kennedy, and the people are already going to the park. The game don't start until 1 o'clock, so you got 3-4 hours. They're starting to go down there already.
Yeah. That has dropped off some in recent years, though. They've either got to turn the team around or finish modernizing Wrigley Field if they ever do.
Well, yeah,
That's an excellent example about how neighborhoods changed. I know that people, especially younger people, they think that Wrigley Field was packed for constantly. That just isn't the case. I know my family, on my mother's side, were all from that Wrigley area, and in the '60s, they were drawing about 8,000 a game.
Yeah,
But
kids.
because the change in the neighborhood, and you got a lot of young people, single people with the disposable income, it's a party atmosphere, and they can afford to go to the game.
well, they go down to the Cubby Bear and all this stuff, and I'm not sure if half of them make it to the park or not, or if they do make it to the park, if they can see anything.
But I wonder how many bars, restaurants, and maybe even some little gift shops or type of thing are right there.
Yeah, that's one of the problems that Sox Park has. There's no atmosphere around the area. It's all desolate, basically. There's a couple bars, but that's about it. And
Well, when you go to a Sox game, you actually have to go to the game.
Yeah,
I mean, it's as strange as that seems, but you actually
you have
go
to want to see the game.
Totally
Right.
different atmosphere.
well, the only advantage that Sox has, you got parking there, where Cubs Park, lots of luck kid.
Well, now in recent years, there were a couple of old taverns right across from the park, McCuddy's, which allegedly Babe Ruth would cut out between innings when they were in the dugout and have a beer. across
I
the
wouldn't be
street.
surprised.
No, I wasn't either. And then there was McCuddy's and O'Brien's was the other one. But then those went with which were the park stands now where they were. They were old buildings, and there was a few other old buildings there. They were supposedly promised a spot.
Talking about Babe
space.
Ruth, if he had the regiment that they have now for the ball players, nobody ever beat him.
You what now?
If you had the regiment that did not.
In training?
Now they have now, because his training was a bottle of beer, and he's just still king of SWAT, although that was not his name, but
The Sultan of SWAT. But
Well, that's it. I got to interrupt to give you one of my favorite jokes that you can actually tell this in mixed company. There was a entertainment agent, and his secretary walked into his office and said, "Hey, I've got a guy out in the waiting room that says he's got a talking dog." So he goes, "Okay, send him in." So the guy walks in, sets the dog down in the seat next to him. So the agent says, "I understand you've got a dog that talks." He goes, "Yeah, I do." He says, "Okay, well, lay it on me." So he turns to the dog and he says, "Okay, Fido, what is the opposite of smooth?" And the dog goes, "Rough." And he goes, "Get out of here with that thing. What are you, nuts?" And he goes, No, the dog talks. Seriously, give me another chance. Give me another chance." He goes, "Okay, I'll give you another chance." He said, "Okay, Fido, what is it that covers the entire top of your house?" And the dog goes, "Roof." He goes, "Get out of here with that thing." He goes, "Oh, serious, please. I'm telling you, this dog talks. Give me one more chance." So you go, "All right, one more chance." "Okay, Fido, what famous baseball player was nicknamed the Sultan of SWAT?" And the dog goes, "Roof." He goes, "Get out of here with that." He takes him, he throws him out, kicks him down the stairs. They tumble down the stairs. They get to the bottom of the stairs, and the dog looks up at him and says, "Who was it, DiMaggio?"
Very good, yeah.
Yes, good old DiMaggio with Marilyn Monroe. Yeah,
The Yankee Clipper?
yeah.
Joltin' Joe?
Joltin' Joe, yeah. But
Anyway,
they got a movie on now with Marilyn Monroe coming up again on TV, but that's
Oh, really?
yeah.
Do we know who's
I-
playing her?
I forgot what it is, but it's one of these reruns. They're going back umpteen years.
What do you mean a rerun? It's a new film.
Remake.
Oh, remake.
Remake. Yeah.
Made for TV. About her.
I didn't get the whole commercial on it, but anyways. But they're going back to the old standards now, because the new movies are sort of falling apart, and they're not as enjoyable as the old ones. Even though the old ones had mistakes in and everything else, they were still a little more enjoyable, as
Yeah,
such.
right. Yeah.
Well, it seems like half the movies you see nowadays are remakes of old ones. They're not coming up with new original scripts anymore.
There's no more creativity.
That's the point.
in Hollywood.
Well, there are only so many real plots anyway. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like there was a little known noir picture I saw the other day. I can't think of the title now, but it had some. Dana Andrews is one of the people in it, and I think Gene Tierney. But this was not Laura. It was another one.
I
And
can't pull out
playing,
the name I saw too. Jack.
you see that one?
Yeah.
Now, playing a thug in that was Harry Von Zell.
Is that? I missed that.
Harry was an actor. Of course, he was also known for the announcer for Burns and Allen. And he was the one, folks, if you've never heard this before, he was the one who was introducing, radio was new, and he was introducing the president. He says, and now introduce the president of the United States, Hubert Huber. Hooper Heber.
Hooper Heber, I think.
He couldn't get it right, so. And that recording that actually exists still, so.
What I always enjoy about the old-time radio is if you had a commercial, you never knew that commercial was coming in. All of a sudden, the commercial's on you. You're having a conversation and say, "Oh yeah, we got Johnson's Wax to take care of that problem."
Especially true of Fibber McGee and Molly.
Yeah.
And you often made it kind of a laughing point, too, in a sense making fun of commercials, like Arthur Godfrey was doing in later days of radio.
No, Jack Benny was famous for having like the Sportsman's Quartet with Don Wilson or something. They had a free hand to do whatever they wanted with that. The Lucky Strike commercials or whoever else they had.
Jell-O.
Lipton tea or Jell-O, right?
Yeah.
Jell-O, yeah. But and as my mom said, that's the way. Even on TV they did the same thing, but they did them completely from beginning to
Yeah,
end.
now the trouble is they got so many commercials they almost got a TV program in.
Hey, this commercial's being interrupted by TV. Yeah, you're right about that. Still,
it's like a hockey game. The fight was interrupted by a game.
yeah, we went to the fights last week and a hockey game broke out.
Yeah.
So,
Well, isn't it true that in a lot of network football games, I mean, the game is purposely interrupted and delayed to let the sponsors get in their commercials? Well,
Right.
it seems to me really a problem.
And during the games, there's a television guy that stands on the sideline, and when it's time for a commercial, or if the timeout that the team called has already expired and they're ready to play again, he steps out on the field. He's got a mitten, a really brightly colored mitten that he holds over his chest, and they don't reinstate play until he drops that mitten and steps off the field. So
Money talks.
So they
That's
control.
the bottom line,
They
yeah.
control the game.
that could be an outgrowth of in Super Bowl I, Green Bay Packers versus Kansas City Chiefs. Now, in those days, folks, there were actually two separate leagues that were fighting each other for years. Finally, they decided they're going to get together, so they come up with the World Championship of Professional Football, which Lamar Hunt, the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs, said his daughter or son recently got a gift called a Super Bowl, the very bouncy ball, right? The one. He says, now we've got a Super Bowl, and the name stuck. But anyway, it was covered by both CBS, who did the NFL, and NBC, who did the AFL. They actually came back. One of the networks came back, and they kicked off for the second half. The guy, they blew it off. Oh no, that wasn't a kick because the one network wasn't back yet. So that was probably an outgrowth of that occurrence that they've had this Big Mitten guy, or was it Big Mittens?
Yeah, the brightly colored mitten,
Important man, right?
the mitten guy. Oh,
The
he runs the show.
He's a liaison between
The official,
Yeah.
the head official, stands over by him, and when he says stop, they stop.
Yeah.
When he
You
says
know,
go, they go.
Money talks and
Something
ball
else
game
was.
makes start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're
Well, interesting, when you think about, television being around forever and radio being around forever, the first nationally broadcast NFL championship game was the 1940 Bears Washington Redskins championship, where the Bears defeated the Washington Redskins by a score of 73-0. And that really is that's a lot of factors. I mean, that was the first in the string of the 1940 championship, Bears championships, and also it was broadcast nationally. And by winning 73-0, it really established the Chicago Bears as, you hear the term America's team, but before that term was even broadcast, the Chicago Bears really were America's team, and based a lot on the strength of that broadcast and that win.
as I understand it, the Bears took a pretty good whooping from them earlier in the
Right.
season.
And the game was played at Washington,
Yeah, right.
and Washington was favored.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the year that George Ellis, if all of us who know the words to the Chicago Bears fight song,
Yeah.
know there's a line in the fight song that says, "We'll never forget the way you thrilled the nation with your T formation."
Mm-hmm.
That was the year that he obviously perfected it.
Well, that wasn't the old full house tee. It was the like the modern set where you had the right halfback became your flanker and whatever. That was what it was. But and you're right. And interestingly, one of our Chicago people, he covered that game as a sports writer and he officiated it. Irv Cupson it did. You doubled up there, Irv. You wouldn't like me double dipping on my job, so what'd you do that? But that's true, yeah.
That's right, Jack.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing on sports games is the enthusiasm and the complex of the team and the sports of people. You know, if they get too complacent and presuming they're going to win, and the other team gets all fired up, you know, you can do a considerable amount of difference.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
You know, it's
Preparation and emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I heard the background from the producers and directors. I forget. I think it was a Monday night game. I'm not sure, but you know, if you watch or see them in the broadcast booth, they're either wearing headphones or earplugs, and they're being fed all this information. You know, like somebody catches a pass and they go, yeah, and he led the Pac-10 in receptions and when his career at Southern Cal. And you think, wow, this guy really knows all these statistics. Somebody's telling him that in his ear. But the funny part about it was there was a dead spot in the broadcast, and one of the producers, you can hear him. Again, you could hear both the announcers and the producers were said to him, "Hey, say something. What are we paying you guys for?"
That makes me think of Howard Cosell was doing Monday Night Football.
Oh,
and
geez.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, this must have been like 71 because my wife and I were married just maybe the second year we were married. And Howard's supposed to be such an expert. The Bears had a giant tackle from Grambling, Frank Cornish, in the late 60s. He was kind of like the Fridge was later. He was taller, really big, heavy man. So, well, he was traded to Miami Dolphins later. So the Bears in Miami are playing Monday Night Football at Miami. And one of those Cornish either sacked somebody or something. Howard says, "Big Frank Cornish, number 71, former Chicago Bear, had his greatest day as a Bear in that 63 championship game." Howard, Frank didn't come in the league till 66. I knew that as a, but so.
Talking about dead space, you remember the old story about Ronald Reagan broadcasting
Yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
there was a whole bunch of dead space in there because he gets a transmission from the ball game and he relays it, and the transmission broke and he kept on going impromptu, and apparently for some reason or other the game followed his script.
Yeah, it was pretty close. He couldn't. The ticker tape, I guess, stopped.
It was a football game, I
But
think, college
he kept
football.
He kept on.
Yeah. And he says, so-and-so's run. Oh, out of nowhere came so-and-so with this tackle, and that's what really happened. So kind of a psychic occurrence at that point. Anyway, are we coming to a break pretty soon, John?
Yep.
Are we coming up?
Okay. Now for a brief intermission. You're listening to Meet the Chicago Historians.
Right back.
We appreciate the warning.
I agree.
There's a couple things that I'd like to.
Hey friends, do you need an awning over your front side or back door? Or do you need an awning over your windows? How about a canopy for your carport or your patio cover over your patio so you can enjoy being outside in the warm weather? All you have to do is call Awnings and More, and Raphael Bogus will drive over, measure up whatever you need, and go from there. You can call Awnings and More at 773-710-8403 or 847-890-1447. So if you need an awning for your windows, doors, call Raphael Bogus at Awnings and more at area code 773-710-8403 or 847-890-1447. Now, Raphael also installs hand railings. For your front, side, or back steps, you must be safe when you go up and down the steps, especially in bad weather. So for awnings and hand railings, call Raphael at area code 773-710-8403 or 847-890-1447. And I guarantee you, you will not be sorry. Call today.
Now back to our special Christmas edition of our Meet the Chicago Historians program. Jack?
Yes, Merry Christmas, everyone. If you don't mind, we're going to bat some contemporary history around in a moment. But first, if I've asked all of my comrades here today, Tom McKenna, Al Opitz, Rich Lang, John DeVita, the boss, if we could just bear with me and indulge me a little bit, I want to give a little bit of recording from Cop Talk of May, I think it was May the 8th, 2008, 5 years old. That was one of the original shows. This is, a lot of people got into WJJG through this. It was the most widely listened to program on the air. They had 2 hours on Saturday morning from 10 to noon. It was hosted by Bill Giaconetti. He was from the 13th and 14th District. Tom, your brother, knew him, or knows him. They're both still with us. And he retired the most decorated cop in Chicago history. He retired as a sergeant here. He went over to Melrose Park for a couple of years as the chief. And his co-host was our friend and former panel member, and also he was the MC here, Vic Justino, who has also been a teacher, and I believe was Truman College and one of the other, DePaul Loyola downtown. He's a history man. And what a history. And a guy who loves Chicago so much. Anyway, this show, they asked for the previous week to write in, give them little experiences of remembering your mother. So I sent them the letter that they read. Have you got that up there, John?
Yes, sir.
Let's go with it.
You get them started now. Well, like we said, we're not going to get into
We're nice today.
We're going to try to be
Try to be nice today. I know.
And,
it's tough for us.
And I'll tell you, we've got Jack Ryan waiting on the line. I believe, if I remember right, Victoria, you got something addressed to you.
Yeah, we got one of Jack Ryan's letters.
Well, you know what? I'm wondering, before we put Jack on.
Yeah.
How about if you read what Jack wrote?
A few lines or what? Huh?
I think you should read it very quickly.
Okay, this is from Jack Ryan. Remembering our mother, Bertha First Ryan. We well remember our mother, the former Bertha First, a German girl from Fuller Park who met our dad, Clem Ryan, a lad from nearby Canaryville, right after the World's Fair in '34, and married the Irishman November 13, 1940. There were 5 of us Ryan kids, 2 girls, 3 boys, always we would call a tough lady with a strong sense of right and wrong and a Teutonic stubborn streak that was only matched by Dad's Irish pick-headedness. In both cases, they were good qualities applied positively and going an extra mile to give their family more than they had. New Deal foot soldiers during the Depression, or as a young couple separated by Dad's service in World War II. We remember Ma as both a fine homemaker and self-taught cook who never made a meal, and she left her own mother's side, the old country German lady we call Grandma. Ma also pitched in for family by serving as a Chicago police guard for 35 years. There was a big help in doing more by sending us all through a total of 60 years of Catholic school. You know how expensive that was. Yeah. Our mother had devoted her whole life to family and carried on when And when we lost Dad in 74, age 59, we will always cherish the memory, which is a very easy thing to do. For see, we are blessed still having with us. She's still with us at age 91 and counting. John T. Jack Ryan. Beautiful.
Yeah, that's from Jack.
I didn't read it the
you,
best.
And I'll tell you,
it's a beautiful
in the
letter.
background, we're playing one of the most beautiful songs about Mama.
Can you put it up?
No, turn it up a little bit. No matter what nationality you are, this says it all. And I love to play this one. This is the Connie Francis version. We also have the Jerry Vale one. But this is a song to all the moms out there, the wives out there. And look at Jack, the beautiful, beautiful story that he tells about his mom. And she's still around, 91 years old. God bless her. And I wish her 100 more years. I know that 91 years old and to still have your mother with you. I tell you, he's a fortunate man.
60 years of Catholic school. She helped.
And the service, the toughest,
crossing guard.
one of the toughest jobs, the crossing guard.
Yeah.
People don't realize, no matter how cold it is, no matter what's going on, rain, sleet, and so, they are standing out there. The crossing guards, I still love them. When I was on the street, I still love to stop and talk to the crossing guards because they had a tough job. And you know, the service. I mean, there's a family service. That's what I mean. Real Americans. Let's now we'll tune it down to the music and we'll talk to Jack. Go ahead, Jack. You're on Cop Talk.
Hello, Jack. How you doing,
Hi,
buddy?
Jack.
Beautiful letter.
That is.
I messed it up a little bit, but it's a beautiful letter.
Oh, you got it right. You got it right. I remember the first thing she said when I was born. Did it live? No, actually.
Oh, come on. Hey, I know you're trying to be lighthearted today, but you know what? I know you better. A mom in a family like that is going to be this precious thing, no matter what. No matter what.
Yeah, we're lucky. We're very lucky.
Yeah, we are.
You and I and Vic and we all take for granted that everyone had a family life to grow up in, and it's just not true.
No.
We take things we take for granted. Like you said, the fact that your dad whistled, he wanted you home, that someone cared for you and taught you behavior and responsibility.
Yeah, they knew they were the parents and we were the kids, and we listened to what they said. You know, it's not like some of the people do today where you want to be buddies with your kids. That wasn't the thing. They wanted to protect you, and the way to protect your child is to give them the love and the proper guidance that an adult would give.
Or even worse than trying to be their friends is the kids that kind of grow up on their own. Like if you let some little puppies wild, they'd be a bunch of wild wolves before too long. And we've seen too much of that in our job, I know.
Without any doubt, Jack.
What did she say when you told her you were going to become a policeman, or at graduation day? What was her comments?
Well, they were a little surprised, but they were very supportive of it. You know, it was my decision all the way. No one else. Oddly enough, I had an uncle on the job before, and when that cadet program came out, I was just coming out of high school, and my mom just mentioned it to me. And I said, "What do they do with the police department?" You know, it's like that. A couple years later, I was taking the exam for patrolman.
Yeah, and Jack, you mentioned that, and we saw in the paper last week the entire family, the mother, the father, and the two twin boys are officers. The Paletti family marched in the parade, and it shows them as young boys, and they are cadets, because you mentioned the cadet program, and they've started that again.
They started that again, right?
And
but hey, you gave us some beautiful memories there, Jack. Thank you very much.
I let it roll around my head for a while first, so.
Yeah, yes, you did, Jack. Thank you. Thanks for your service. All right, and Vic, we like I said, we have.
I got another letter.
Okay, are we there? That was Cop Talk from the 8th of May, 2008, 5 years ago. And my mother died following September 28th. And, well, you can't say she didn't have melancholy, but 91 isn't really so bad when you think about it. She never had anything really wrong with her, so... I mean, toward the end, she was starting a little dementia or something, but, 91. Okay, folks, when we get back to our current history discussion, and we're going to try to bring that around to the for the next 50 minutes. So anyway, here we go. Current events. What do we have of interest to anyone?
Mandela
Locally.
died.
Mandela, okay. And we all heard his name for years and years.
Yeah, he had a interesting life, I guess the way of putting it. 30 years in jail.
That's right. We refused to recant anything,
Yeah.
so
He was stubborn.
he must have had a set, huh?
Yeah, and the big problem is you always get the better light of him, which is
Of course.
all well and good. But I understand he had his problems too, like everybody else.
Well,
does.
sure.
Yeah, it really isn't the appropriate time to talk about, in my opinion, someone's death. Let them honor him and glorify him and give tribute to him. Because we unfortunately know that the situation in South Africa isn't as rosy a picture as people would like to present. But a very interesting occurrence during that whole tribute at the stadium was the phony hearing impaired interpreter that was standing next to all these dignitaries,
Including our president.
yeah, including our president. And I guess he was, it wasn't even close to being accurate with any of his signing. And I mean, how does something like that happen?
Yeah. Well, it's even funnier. You watch Saturday Night Live. They did a reenactment, and it was really hilarious because I don't remember his name, but the black guy was behind him, giving all the signals and everything else, jumping all over the place. It was.
Well, I don't know anything about signing, but that sure didn't look like signing to me. It looked like he was doing some martial arts or something.
Generally, a lot of it's with the fingers. You gotta be able to read fast. I guess the way of putting it.
This print was small, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think somebody would have caught on after a couple of minutes of this and pulled him off at some point? But it seemed to go on for a long while.
Right there, they were stuck with a real embarrassment too. How did he get this position?
Well, plus they said before this even happened. I mean, that day with all the heads of state that were going to be there, that the security was going to be, airtight. Mm-hmm. And here they have a guy who says, supposedly he has a criminal history and had psychological problems, and he's standing almost shoulder to shoulder with the President of the United States.
Yeah. Leave Joe Biden out of this.
Well, Joe made a great, as only Joe can do. He made a great comment about when he was talking about Mandela, and he said, and Mandela is one of the most amazing men. And then he realized, because now in the politically correct world, you're not supposed to say men, so he said, "He's one of the most amazing men or women that I have ever met." He actually said that. So I guess poor Joe didn't know if Mandela was a man or a woman, I guess.
So instead of saying person, he said
yeah, right.
Human or person.
I knew what he was trying to do, but as only Joe can do, he messed it up and said, "One of the most amazing men or women."
Why don't you just leave it at man by then,
Yeah, no.
Mankind,
This politically correctness is getting to the point where it's a real pain in the butt,
Derriere.
Derriere, okay.
Is that okay to say Derriere? I don't know. That's French, isn't it?
It's like, like Jack here, his follicle impaired.
Yeah, well, I'm also vertically challenged also.
Well, at least Channel 26 can rebroadcast old episodes of All in the Family. Yeah. Even though that show could never be done nowadays because of its political incorrectness. Yeah.
I remember they had a big disclaimer when it came on, didn't they, the first night?
Yeah. Well,
kind of like you read before our shows, like that.
Well, it's funny because of the fact there was never any real complaints about it, and then the Jeffersons came out of it as an offshoot. So, and that was almost as bad, if not worse.
Well, the episode where Sammy Davis Jr. kissed Archie.
Yeah, that was funny.
To Archie Bunker, the whitest guy you know, and Archie thought that was a compliment, right?
That's still funny.
But getting back to Mandela, I didn't realize that it was that long ago since he was released. Was it
1990? Yeah.
That's
25
a few years
ago,
have rolled around since then, you know. So.
Yeah.
And he had quite a bit of believing in force, radicalism, and communism in his background, but he just left that. He saw that was no way to proceed.
Yeah,
so by the time he was released, he was...
he was planning supposedly on nationalizing everything, but he went to one of the economic conferences and he saw what a great way capitalism, or as we maybe should better call it, free enterprise,
right,
how it builds up
right.
an economy and makes everybody...
I think when he first came out, there was the big farms. The better word for it, industrial farms.
Yeah.
And he wanted to break them up, but the fact was that the people didn't have any experience at farming or at enterprise, and it would have devastated the country.
Just what happened in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
People were getting farms that had no experience. Like if I, had agriculture, I could botch up a little.
You got to know what you're doing when you do that. You know, it's not an easy task.
That and the fact that he didn't come up much in the same way Abraham Lincoln thought of the South. How we can do with the South, act like it never happened. Mm-hmm. He was going to come out and forget about any revenge or whatever. And it's you got to admire him for that.
Well, the only thing that's bad about Abraham Lincoln, he got assassinated, and then
that's right.
Andrew Johnson came up and screwed everything up.
Yeah,
was one of the worst presidents in the world.
These radical Republicans also wanted the South to pay for this, and during Reconstruction.
Yeah, that's always true, but I think he tried to placate him and everything else. So it was. He's one of the more famous presidents. It's sort of interesting. Almost all the famous presidents are Republican, but the fact is that Andrew Johnson, considered one of the worst presidents, followed him, and he wanted to resurrect the South.
Yeah,
and
put it back in place.
They're still playing that game down there once in a while.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right, down south, I mean, being in the Gulf Coast, in Alabama and Mississippi, and being in Savannah, Georgia, and I mean, they don't refer to it as a civil war. They refer to it as the War of Northern Aggression,
or the war between the states.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Lincoln's war is one also.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we played one of the bagpipe bands that I was in. We played at a Celtic festival in Biloxi, Mississippi, and they played the national anthem, and then they played, and this is what the announcer said, and now we'd like to play what would have been our national anthem if things turned out differently, and they played Dixie, and it got the same reception. People stood, and
Lincoln always said that Dixie was one of his favorite songs.
He asked for that when he heard of the end of Appomattox and all that. He called for that Dixie. And the Battle Hymn of the Republic, too.
Yeah, what's interesting is John Philip Sousa was one of the keynote writers of all these marching songs. I think he's the one who wrote Dixie.
No, I don't. I think Dixie was long before his time.
No,
he played it. He played it.
He played it a lot.
Yeah,
but
okay.
he didn't write it.
Yeah, they show in the film when they want to cancel his show, so he marches over from the train having them playing Dixie, and everybody, of course, falls in line.
That's how I remember.
Yeah,
okay.
Remember one time, it makes me think, this is off the subject totally. Jackie Gleason used to do it was like a commercial break for the movie, and what you'd get was a bonus, and what he always say, a 5-pound wedge of boccia cheese, So one of the other prizes you got was a record album. Dorothy Kilgallen sings John Philip Sousa, which I thought was very funny. My sister laughed the hardest of all. But anyway, getting back to how do we get to from the Mandela. Anyway, as I said, a lot of people, they have a certain, I guess it's a certain character trait where you're not. It seems to be a natural reaction to want to get even, and he put that all aside and. Even de Klerk even became a deputy in the former president became a deputy in the new government too. So it was.
Mandela invited one of his guards, several of his guards, I think, when he was in prison, to his inauguration. So.
Well, that goes beyond just staging things for what it looks like. I think when somebody does these things,
And the interesting thing about a recent documentary on Mandela is, I guess, for a couple of years while Mandela was still in prison, he was actively negotiating with leaders of the South African government on what the future course of the country would be. Not simply that he was released very quickly, but he was considered almost a spokesman for the blacks while he was still in prison.
And he also learned Afrikaans.
The Dutch-based language.
Dutch dialect, right?
Yeah,
that they,
yeah.
he was
Yeah, you know, I don't-
Afrikaner or Afrikaans.
Yeah, it was. The Dutch were thrown out by the English,
Yeah.
and then the
Boer
English,
War.
The Boer War.
the Boer Wars, which they had an interesting movie on, but I'm not sure how accurate it was.
What's that?
The Boers War.
What's the name of it?
I don't remember.
Oh yeah, I'll think of it tonight about 2 in the morning.
Good point.
But
Boer in Dutch, I think, means farmer. Boer, B-O-E-R.
oh, does it?
So yeah, it was a Boer War.
I think the Boer War, that episode, was the first crack in the British Empire, that the British nominally won the war, but the Boers were still pretty much left to govern the country. They could gradually, they withdrew from the Commonwealth and instituted apartheid. The British weren't really participating much in those decisions.
Well, going back, this must have been before 1990 when he was released, but South Africa came up with this idea of these mythical homelands. Do you remember that? There were like 5 little stretches of land, probably in the Kalahari or somewhere, and different people are supposedly heads of these, much the way Indian reservations were made in the U.S. And they'd all have their own flag and their own little prime minister or whatever, and it's long gone. It was never recognized by anyone outside of their...
No, it don't work too well.
Do you remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, India has the same problem because they have, I think, 6 states, and they don't always get along too well. But they have to come under one leadership. So I guess in general they're all right. But you got 1 billion people there. It's hard to govern that many people, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, there's how many different languages and how many different racial groups they call it.
Yeah, you got several different religions too. You got the Muslims, you got the Hindus, Sikhs, which is it's a I think part of the not Hindu, but Muslim religion. I'm not sure.
No.
Okay, it's completely different. And a couple other religions around. You got the Buddhists coming in there. You got the Christians in there.
Jews in there, Jewish religion.
There's a little bit of Jewish.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
So you got all this mix of states and languages and everything else, and then you got the Pakistanis on one side, and they don't always get along too well.
Yeah. Well, that's why I heard recently that the word was created, like 1947 was John Bull says bye to India. 1947. John Bull, folks, a lot of you kids over at the Ridgewood probably haven't even heard the term. John Bull was for England or Great Britain, as we say Uncle Sam for the United States. Yeah. Of course, he's much older. So in 1947, I think it was Lord Mountbatten was in charge of it, but India was receiving independence. Well, they petitioned for, and they got the 2 states of India, basically Hindu, Pakistan, Muslim. That's how that. There used to be Bangladesh was originally called East Pakistan.
Right.
It was separated by thousands of miles in between, way over where it was.
So it was one big state at one time, and then it was split up into Pakistan or West Pakistan,
East Pakistan,
and India, and then you got I think 6 states in India. Yeah. So you got a real mess, I guess, on your hands.
Yeah, real conglomeration. But it's a democracy. It's a democracy and a republic, and the way it's working out so far.
Yeah, they got a lot of funny. The bad part about it is a lot of the more intelligent and rich people come to the States because of the fact that they have more freedom here, although it's cheaper to live in India. But you got a lot of doctors here. You got a lot of nurses.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And you got other engineers to some degree, although not that many, but still you have a few.
Mm-hmm.
So and then
I can remember as a little guy heard the term Indian elephant, and I pictured an American Indian with a full headdress crossing the Great Plains on an elephant. And then my mother explained Indian, and how the term Indian was a misnomer, but it stuck with the...
Yeah, so that was a question of what would you have called the natives at that time here in the United States if it wasn't for Christopher Columbus?
I don't know.
You know, that's a question. I do know that they prefer being called by their tribal names. So if you're
Sioux or Potawatomi.
all this, Potawatomi, the Navajo, you got like 400 different tribes in the United States.
Yeah.
And so, you know,
Well, they refer to themselves as nations, like the Navajo Nation and the Sioux Nation.
Iroquois was a big one of these.
Well, we had, what was the guy's name we had here, John?
Yeah, we did a show on that.
What was our-
he was part Navajo and part what was he? That's a harder name to come up with.
Is John here?
Choctaw, I think.
Choctaw, yeah.
Was it?
And
Well, that'd be my my father-in-law, who I never met, because he died when he was a young man. He was part, I think it was Choctaw, or
yeah, that's
very little bit.
Yeah, they're. I don't think they're that big of a tribe, but apparently they were well used in the Second World War. I guess the way of putting it, because they did the code talking. They weren't the only ones, but they were most notorious for it.
Well, it's amazing how patriotic most Native Americans are, because you know what the
They did to 'em,
the situation was. I mean, their service in the military is legendary.
And here they were, they had less than equality at home. You know, if not by law, by actuality, by Uri and by de facto and de Uri. There was no law, but they were just kind of like discriminated against.
Yeah, now there gets to be a problem of trying to reintegrate some of them, because most of them have integrated, but they don't have the educational background, and the tribal background is not always the greatest, depending on what tribe they're from.
And I remember seeing an illustration or a photo of the elders of the Cherokee Nation around Will Rogers' birth time, and none of them look as you would think an Indian would. The costuming, the hair, a lot of beards, and because there was also a mixture with the Caucasians in there. So
it was sort of funny. I seen an article on the TV where it's part of the Cherokee Nation claim that they're Jewish. They came over from.
Pardon me, a quick interruption for a break. You've been listening to Meet the Chicago Historians, and we thank you for it. We'll be right back.
How are the tires on your vehicle? Do you need motor oil? Or do you need transmission fluid? Or how about power steering fluid? How's the antifreeze? And how about the wiper blades? Are they in good, sharp condition? Is the washer fluid in your tank full? How good is your battery? Do you need light bulbs? Well, the place to pick up all these items is at Berkeley Auto Supply at 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley, Illinois. Stop in and see Tom, and he'll get any part or supply you might need for your vehicle. Tom at Berkeley Auto Supply has everything you need for your vehicle. He has every tool, part, and supply you might need, from the front bumper to the rear bumper, from the top of the roof to the bottom of the chassis. You can call Tom at 708-544-8350, and they are located at 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley, Illinois. Now, Tom's hours are Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m., Saturdays from 8 a.m. until 6 p.m., and on Sundays from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's Berkeley Auto Supply, 5237 St. Charles Road, and they are just east of Wolf Road and west of Mannheim Road, about 2 miles, and he's on the south side of the street. Call 708-544-8350. For parts, tools, and supplies, it's Berkeley Auto Supply. His phone number, once again, is 708-544-8350, and they are located at 5237 St. Charles Road in Berkeley, Illinois.
Now, back to our show.
Well, good afternoon, and this is our continued Christmas show. We're getting on quite a few topics of local, recent history, current events. And once again, we got Al Opitz. Hello, Al. Tom McKenna.
Hello.
Rich Lang, our announcer. And
Good afternoon.
you have an extensive background in academia, don't you?
Not really.
No? Oh.
I never got an advanced degree, but I did some hanging around graduate schools
did you?
and teaching in college for a while. Never could buckle down to do the research for a degree.
Were you an instructor?
Yeah.
History?
Well, a couple of years, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That sounds good to me. Well, anyway, huh?
You were talking about, I think we want to go into the customs of Christmas as such. How that
Well,
started.
before that, we got a little bit of other history to talk about, recent events. For someone who suggested that about, was that you, Rich, about the recent deaths in show business we've had?
Yeah, up to a point, maybe continuing the tradition, it seems that you get those deaths in threes.
And we sure did this time.
Yeah. Peter O'Toole, Joan Fontaine, Tom McLaughlin.
Tom Laughlin. Laughlin or Laughlin?
Laughlin,
Don't
I'm
make
not
him
sure
there.
about that.
They probably got that.
He's the least known of the three, I would say.
Yeah, he's Irish, so don't worry about it.
Oh, jeez.
Well, it's O'Toole. What's O'Toole? Isn't that Irish? Peter O'Toole.
Peter O'Toole.
Fontaine? No.
Came on the scene, young actor in Lawrence of Arabia. I don't even think
That
he
was
made a
his first
film.
big-
Before that.
Yeah,
He
I
may
think he
have
was
had
doing theater in
He was right. He was
the,
off the
late
stage.
50s, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was nominated for Academy Award several times, but I don't think he ever won an actual.
No, he
he
never
won.
He had honorary
He won
Academy
the
Award.
Lifetime Achievement Academy Award.
But anyone, if you've never seen Lawrence of Arabia, shame on you, because of course it's still a movie. It was a great
Holds up very
international-
well. Yes.
Yeah, but it was a lot of that was based on actual happenings. There was a guy who was a little strange, you know. He was what do you want to say? He was eccentric. Like when they said to him, he's getting this assignment in the movie to go meet up with King Faisal, and this will be fun or something. He looked at everything as an adventure, and he was fluent in all the Arab history and language, and he could speak it. He knew all about the Quran, and what else am I missing about the real person? No,
He liked to drink a lot.
the real guy, or Peter O'Toole.
Peter
I
O'Toole.
think
Oh
Peter
yes,
O'Toole.
yeah, we know that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He said in that famous scene where they were going to ride into Aqaba to take it over, the town of Aqaba, the city, had its guns facing the ocean because behind it was this one desert. I can't think of the name offhand, but no one could cross that desert, they said. Well, they did cross it, and they, without any prior information of the portion of the British Army in Cairo, he went with himself and a few British officers and a whole bunch of Arabian, or what would they call themselves then? What's the other word? Oh, I'll think of it later. No, Bedouins, the different tribes.
Different tribe.
And they took this from the Turks, which was Turkey at the time was an ally of Germany and of Austria-Hungary and the Central Powers, and it was considered kind of a sideshow to the war in Europe, but it was a war nonetheless.
Well, they also part of the Ottoman Empire,
Yeah, right.
which one time was fairly strong, and it was almost non-existent at that time
He
already.
was called the sick man of Europe by
Yeah, I
early
just
20th
saw
century,
something
right.
about them.
Yeah.
They, for about 300 years, they ruled the Mediterranean with their navy.
and the Balkan states, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's why we have those different places in Europe now, like was that are Muslim.
Yeah, that was a big fight with Yugoslavia because of
Herzegovina.
Well, they have Yugoslavia, Herzegovina, that whole area because of the fact that the Ottoman Empire came in and converted a lot of these people to the Muslim religion.
Or else.
or else.
Yeah, Kid Roll, yeah.
Sometimes, yeah. And the other ones was you had the Christian and you had the Orthodox Christians. And all of a sudden somebody decided they're going to purify the race or country or whatever terminology was that, and consequently the war started. And all of a sudden you're trying to figure out this group fought against this group, and then they merged, they fought against the other group, and pretty soon you're trying to figure out what was going on besides a lot of fighting going on. And there was never any real direction at all.
Heavy population
And
in
Tito
Albania.
was the cement that held all that together.
Oh,
to
he
its
did it
death,
by
yeah.
brute strength.
Sure.
Yeah. He would never admit was he Serbian or Croatian either.
I think he was Croatian, I believe.
I think he was.
Yeah.
Joseph,
But the majority, I think, most of the people were Serbs. I think they had the largest
Yeah.
population.
They have the same language with a different alphabet.
That's
They
interesting.
do, yeah.
Cyrillic.
And is it Cyrillic alphabet for the Serbs?
Ukraine has a variation of the Cyrillic language, which
Ukrainian?
is Russian.
Ukraine?
Yeah.
Well, that's another place altogether now.
Yeah, that's another world, but there's variations of it, and this was originally a variation of the Greek alphabet, because the Greeks at one time were quite strong in there, and they were trading partners, and Russia was developed because as a trading route between the north and the south, and you had the Greeks, the Jews, and the Swedes trading back and forth. So consequently, you got the name St. Petersburg and stuff like that, and a lot of Germanic names for Russian towns.
Yeah. Peter the Great was out to westernize much of Russia in his day. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Peter the Great was sort of a strange character, too. If you had a movie about him, him and Lawrence of Arabia would have
That'd be
a real tussle.
But that makes
crazier.
me, not to get off the subject too much, but that makes me think of, do you remember when they did those Dean Martin roasts?
Yeah.
They were roasting O.J. one time, and Norm Crosby got up and says, many of you people, we all know O.J. is a great football player. Did you know he was quite a track man, too? As a matter of fact, O.J. was going to a track meet one time, and he tapped the guy in front of him and said, excuse me, are you a pole vaulter? And he said, well, no, I'm Ukrainian. Well, how did you know my name was Walter? Getting back to where we went out. Peter O'Toole.
Thank you.
Peter
That was Jack Ryan that just said that. So for those of you scoring at home, Jack Ryan.
They don't want to be blamed for that one.
Right.
But
Why not? We're blaming for everything else.
but as I said,
And Peter
when,
O'Toole never did another movie role to come close to equaling his
yeah,
role in
that was
Lawrence
quite a
Arabia.
film.
He did a
though,
few
wasn't it?
movies after that, but Peter O'Toole, Lawrence Arabia is his
he
big
wanted to be more of a
contribution.
stage actor than he wanted to be a film actor, and I think he liked
I think you're right.
presentation as an audience in front of him.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of actors say, but the movies pay so well.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
another situation.
Yeah.
Money talks, BS walks.
He had much more of a theater-trained voice,
Yeah.
Peter O'Toole. Yeah.
Well, I guess he did a lot of Shakespeare.
Yeah.
he
He
did.
did Hamlet later on. Yeah.
I can't.
Me too.
But as you're saying, I can't think offhand of another film that I would say, "Oh, Peter O'Toole."
Right.
always Lawrence of Arabia.
I think he was in.
One Woody Allen movie, I think.
I think
Parody of James Bond, I believe it was. Not sure.
They did that. My favorite year.
That's right. That was a good one.
That was it was a
Kind of a Sid Caesar.
That's right. It was kind of like the
Right,
early
right,
days of
right.
television thing.
Yeah.
I
He
think
was like an Errol Flynn type guy, and that was
It might have been a second best movie.
I think he also was a backup in Harry Potter movies.
That I don't know.
was he?
'Cause,
I have never seen one, so I couldn't
the
say.
original wizard was somewhat sickly, and he died in the series, during the series, and they had to have somebody else come in. I think it was Peter O'Toole. I might be wrong on that.
Folks, let us know. Can you call us as soon as possible? Poor Peter, we got him. I know there's some others. Will probably maybe one of those like. Was he one of those like Murder on the Orient Express? Is one of the characters in that, or
Wouldn't be surprised.
On the Nile,
No,
One
I
Murder
don't
on the
think
Nile?
so.
And then we talked about Joan Fontaine just
Okay,
passed
Joan
away.
Fontaine.
Now, was she and Olivia Havilland twin sisters?
no, I don't think they were
Not
twins.
quite, but they were, I think, within a year of each
Olivia,
other.
Olivia
sisters,
was a little
right.
bit older.
And they were both Brits too. Actually,
Okay.
people don't. They did so many films here.
Right.
Olivia de Havilland and
Yeah, well, her name was Joan de Havilland at one time.
That
for some
was
reason
the
or other.
family name, I think.
Yeah, and then she changed the name, and then I think the family was in theater before the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the only two sisters that ever won
Ken Miller?
Oscars.
Yeah. For what do you know?
I don't know
offhand,
what
or-
Olivia won for.
Yeah, well, whatever. I don't remember her too well myself.
Joan
That's more
Fontaine.
your age.
Got to ask, maybe someone knows. Is Joan Fontaine related to Frank Fontaine?
No,
Probably not.
probably not. I think he was. I
don't-
think he was supposed to be a comedian.
I don't think so.
But I wonder where she got the name, why she took up the name Fontaine.
Could possibly be a family, even
Cousin.
somebody will take a mother's maiden name or something like that.
Possibly,
You know.
yeah,
Could be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it was for years. I remember when I first became aware of some of these people, watching Jim Moran movies. You know, when he sponsored
all
these.
the courtesy
My mother
men.
said to us then, "Yeah, her and Olivia had their sister. They haven't spoken in years. That was then.
Yes.
So that was for all these years now.
We'll see if Olivia comes out with any kind of statement commenting on her sister's death. We'll see.
She did. Is she still
I don't know. I haven't seen that
She's
yet. But it'll be
90,
interesting
she's
when it comes out.
96 or 95.
Who
Olivia.
was? Joan Fontaine.
She was 97.
Oh, 90.
I believe so. Or born in, no, I take that back. Born in 1917, I think 96 was her age.
Yeah, they 96, 97, somewhere in that range. And then Fontaine was a year younger or something like
I
that.
think you're right.
They were close
Yeah.
in age, but not anything else.
Okay, that's.
And then,
We got Tom Laughlin.
yeah,
Billy Jack.
I don't know him, to tell you the truth.
Well,
Peaceful but very violent movies.
yeah, it was during that clenched fist, power to the people era.
Yeah.
Billy Jack,
Early
being taken
70s,
off.
right.
Some interesting. The first picture the character appeared in was a American International cheapie called "The Born Losers." He was the hero of that
right.
picture. Do you remember seeing that? Did we see
Right.
that at the
Right,
drive-in?
that was the American International, and they did all those low-budget motorcycle
Yeah,
movies.
beach blanket movies.
Yeah, right.
Horror pictures.
They all made money.
Vincent
Well, they sure did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
They also were made in about 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's even better than silent movies, huh?
And that was, of course, there were in those days we had thousands of drive-ins where they had to have
Yeah.
fodder for
Quite a
that.
few. You're right. Yeah.
The fodder was somebody, and the mother was somebody else, but the fodder was that definitely.
Yeah, no, it was always funny how fast the silent movies were produced. They used to produce them in less than a week.
Some were like everything else.
Roger Corman with his Vincent Price series,
Yeah.
horror movies.
Yeah, right.
Right.
The Raven, and he took
The
all those.
Pendulum, yeah.
He took all those old guys, old actors who were in them, like Peter Lorre and Karloff and Vincent Price, and who else? Maybe Blond
There's
Cheney
always
Jr.
your buddy Swengoolie. He always plays those.
But I'm saying
I think Basil Rathbone was in one or two.
Basil Rathbone. Yeah, they got to work that way anyway. But they actually, when you look at them, they really were schlock. But
Yeah. Interesting in that regard.
Well,
yeah.
they call them popcorn movies because that's all.
oh, that's not they can't be fun. They can always be fun.
Yeah.
I think Francis X. Bushman made one at the end of his life.
Yeah, he probably did. What you know a title offhand? I remember seeing him on Adobe
Right,
Gillis.
You're,
Adobe Gillis.
you're talking about Basil Rathbone. It was sort of interesting when he played Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yeah.
He was older than Dr. Watson.
He was.
And Dr. Watson looked like he was older than Basil.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Nigel
Nigel
Bruce was the guy, yeah.
yeah.
Who also was in one of Joan Fontaine's big movies, Suspicion.
So was he?
I believe so. yeah.
Suspicion. Okay.
Yeah.
What was another? Do you remember another?
Well, Rebecca was, I think, her first.
Rebecca.
Most well known, yeah.
It's always interesting. I've known a couple of people who work together, and the older guy looked younger than the younger guy.
Yeah, well, that's acting too, because I remember the original Rocky movie. The champ is bringing Rocky out. Come on, like he's the kid, you know, and he was like 5 years older than Apollo in real life.
Well,
But that's acting.
And the TV series Bonanza wasn't one of the sons around the same age as
Lauren Green, yeah.
You're right about that.
Lauren
He wasn't
Green.
that old.
There's
right?
only one left.
Pernell Roberts? No, none left now. I don't
No.
think.
Oh, Pernell Roberts died.
He's
finally?
gone too. Yeah,
Okay, he was the last one then.
and he was the one who used to bum rap the part all the time. Remember?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he left early.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, then he played a doctor for a while.
Yeah,
And
Trevor
Dan
John-
Blocker was the,
Yeah,
the
he was the
youngest
first.
son on the show.
Someone said about Bonanza. That's the show. Whereas the 50-year-old father lives on the ranch with his 3 40-year-old sons.
Well,
That's about right.
Talking about John Wayne movie, remember he played the sons of Katie Elder.
Sons of Katie Elder.
Middle
Gene
60s,
Martin.
yeah.
Yeah,
And was it Yeah, I think the other guy was.
That was
I think
40
he the
years
one-
difference between the ages of two brothers or something like that.
No, Earl was on Policewoman later. Earl.
Holloman.
Yeah, wasn't that? Was he one of the sons too?
I think so. In
Yeah.
Sons of Katie Elder, you're right.
Well, I was watching a rerun of the Phil Silver show, commonly known as Sergeant Bilko.
Or you never get rich. One of those.
And the privates in the barracks were like 45 and 50 years old.
Yeah, the younger ones.
Yeah, and then they were the younger ones.
Yeah. Remember it was
Doberman, I think, was the one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
They had supposedly that's how George Kennedy got into film. He was in some kind of a filmmaking unit or something, and when he was supposed to be over here on the set of Bilko to be the technical advisor, and they needed someone to walk out as an officer, and he did it. So
Yeah, supposedly Phil Silver said, I guess they were waiting to get somebody suited up, and it was just a walk-on part, and he says, "What?
use him.
Give it to him. He's hanging around here doing nothing." And that's, I guess, that was his start in show business.
That Phil Silver show holds up pretty well even today.
Yeah.
It's cleverly
that's great.
written. And he's
the
quite the guy.
classic scammer.
Yeah.
And at the time that was made, there was still a lot of these old veterans around from World War II, who careermen, So
Right.
same thing with No Time for Sergeants with
Well, the other one is the PT. What's that?
McHale's
109?
Navy?
No.
No.
What was that?
McHale's Navy.
McHale's Navy, yeah.
Yeah.
And the one that was really funny was the remake as a movie, except it was called Periscope.
Oh, Periscope.
Down
The
Periscope.
TV
Was
series.
Tim Conway in that?
No, but
He was in
it
one
was
of
a
those.
takeoff of the show. But you just sit there, and all these jokes are very similar, and the stuff they came up with all the time, and how that PT boat ever survived, because they were made out of plywood in the first place. They were never meant to really last any period of time.
Well, one good question is, how did the captain of the ship, John F. Kennedy, what was his rank? Lieutenant J.G. or something, or Lieutenant?
Yeah, something
whatever.
like that. He was-
Anyway, how did he manage to get this ship in the path of this destroyer? Which is it's a
Wasn't
fast
easy.
moving smaller ship, so
It wasn't easy.
no.
But they were, like I said, plywood, and if they got hit, they would shatter, basically. They didn't have much to them.
But they used quite a bit of them in the Pacific,
Yeah,
didn't
the Germans started out with the Schnell boat, and I think they copied it off of that, because they were a small boat again. It went around fast and had big engines and armament and not much else.
Well, Germany didn't have much of a navy either for the U-boats.
No, they really didn't. They had U-boats and small cruisers and stuff like that.
Sink the Bismarck? Oh, yeah.
That's
Pocket
World War
battleships, they
Ships,
call
yeah,
them.
yeah.
My favorite television show, and I can just imagine the when the creative people, when they call it in show business, going in to pitch a television show,
An idea?
is Hogan's Heroes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've got a great comment. Well, where's the? Okay, well, give me the background. Well, it's based in a German prisoner of war camp. All right, thank you. Next.
How did that ever go up?
I mean, who would
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the only other thing that it could have been worse is saying, well, it's based in a concentration camp.
Right.
Well,
Well, they-
the other one is just as bad as the not Hogan's Heroes. You got me.
Stalag 17?
That was a good movie.
That had been a stage
That was
play,
good movie.
too.
Yeah,
That's kind
I
of what
think
they
you're
got to...
right.
Yeah, that was a classic.
Okay.
Well, the medical program was at
MASH.
MASH. That lasted 3 times as long as the original Korean War did. You know?
I never cared for it. Of course, I never cared for Ellen Alda, maybe, but I talked to a couple of guys who were, veterans of the Korean War, and they loved it. So just for that reason.
Well, the big thing on that was the fact that medical progress was phenomenal in that period of time, because of the fact that all the innovations they produced during that war, and whether you like it or not, but and my wife's a nurse. She said that a lot of stuff does take place in the operating room.
Keep talking.
You know, it's maybe people don't want to hear it, but
Well, the same thing with the Vietnam War. All the medical advancements that because the war went on so long and there were such catastrophic injuries that they really had a chance to develop.
That was a stupid war in the first place. You know, we could blame. Actually, that war goes back to Indochina with Truman, but it's gone through Truman, Eisenhower, then Kennedy.
Al, do you think Kennedy would have stayed in Vietnam like Johnson did? That was the big thing.
Well, he's the one who really opened it up.
So-called advisors, several thousand.
Well, Eisenhower put the advisors in there. Truman, from what I've understood, was the fact that he talked the French into staying into Indochina. They wanted to pull out after the Second World War. And then when Eisenhower came in, he sent not mercenaries, but advisors. And
Kennedy continued that.
I think at the time when Kennedy became in the power, the French wanted to pull out. And for some reason or other, they had this ship that went in. It was never supposed to be there in the first place. Got sunk by the North Vietnamese, and the war broke open, which had really no value to whatsoever to anybody.
It was almost a made-up incident, as we look back.
Basically, what it amounted to. So a lot of people want to blame a lot of things going on. There's enough to spread around, but Kennedy, I think, was the biggest culprit of the group.
Kennedy. Okay.
And the other one was the Bay of Pigs, Kennedy. It was a
big defeat.
Having a radio program, we're going to invade Cuba, and the ships are coming aboard. Oh, geez.
Well, the way that was planned in the Eisenhower administration, correct? And he wasn't in favor of it. So either you had to be for it or not. Don't go half fast.
Don't take away the air cover, whatever he did.
He was a set of advisors and stuff like that, but I don't think the war broke out under Eisenhower.
No, that's the planning for all that was underway.
It's a possibility, but
Kennedy, it was pretty early on.
Kennedy should have pulled out while he had the chance.
Or don't have it, or have it or don't have it. You can't go in, one way.
That was part of the stupidity of the whole program. They you can't bomb this place because it might do some damage, huh?
Yeah. Gee, really?
Just declare victory and then pull out.
And then how many people did you kill today?
Yeah.
I don't care where you did it. How many did you kill? The body count thing and all this stuff. And
I heard
did everything from Washington. None of the big shots stepped out of the Purple Palace down there.
Talk program, and I can't remember who was the guest on it, but this is a former military. In Vietnam, there was something like 27 military targets that we didn't touch that would have actually run into that war, or would have been
devastating to the North,
micromanaging.
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't there, but we had friends that were.
Well, they were trying to fight a humane war, and you just can't do it.
Oxymoron in itself.
Right.
No.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
That might be a just war, but
the thing is, and it turned into a mess, and it got worse. And I mean, look at what it did.
And
look at what it did to this country.
And Johnson really screwed it up. He completely screwed it. As bad as Kennedy was, Johnson was worse.
He made a statement. I don't want an outhouse bombed out there without my knowing about it first or something.
Sounds like something.
He didn't say outhouse, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, plus the Secretary of Defense, McNamara, wrote a book about it. I didn't read it, but supposedly.
Now, yeah.
Yeah, he said. I mean, he should have been put in jail. Yeah. I mean, really. I mean, what a mistake it is. Well, why don't you say something then?
Right.
What
was his background? One of the automobile companies, right?
Ford, I believe.
Was he a big? Is he
I believe
the
so.
chief?
Yeah. The trouble with McNamara was he wanted to run the services like government, and you can't do it. You can't do it. The government, especially military, their main objective other than fighting a war is to waste money. And they do.
Can we quote you on that? That was Al Open said that, folks.
They do a good job of both. And the fact is that there's no other way of running anything, because if you don't spend the money to keep up, you're going to be walked over by your enemies. So you waste money. There's no other way of putting it. And you got to keep up the military. So you come out there and you got the politicians. Like now they want to get rid of the A-10, which is the greatest anti-tank weapon they have out there. It's slow. It's deliberate. It's built like a tank in itself because they got two engines on there. You shoot one engine out that don't affect the plane. You bring it in, it's flying the next day. This plane is remarkable in its fact of the tenacity of it, if nothing else. But the Army, the Air Force never liked it. The Army loves it because of the fact it's great troop covers and everything else.
Is this a vehicle for a ground vehicle or
No, it's an attack plane.
Plane, okay.
It's ugly. One of the ugliest planes they put out there, but it works. And it's a slow flying plane. It's a daylight flying plane. It's not for night. And but you go into there, it's shot. You got the F-16 or 15 or 18 or whatever goes around. It can only make one pass. The A-10 comes in there, it loiters. It's got an hour loitering time, so it'll go and circle around and watch, and it just come down and.
Is this manned? It's not one of these robot things, is it? No.
I question whether a robotic plane could ever really supersede.
Drones, I call them,
Yeah, drones. They could do a good job, no doubt about it, but I don't think that they can really fully supersede a manned aircraft.
Well, it's like they said for years and years the infantryman was obsolete, but he's still around too, isn't he?
Yeah. Well,
boots on the ground.
What's funny is the old Army theme song, the caissons go marching on it, whatever. That's not allowed anymore.
The Army goes marching along.
Yeah, whatever.
What was a caisson anyway?
A caisson, I think, was like a little truck carried things.
Right.
They
Supplies, huh?
they
Used
still
to
use
transport,
caissons at
right.
Arlington National Cemetery when they bring the coffins in to bury them.
Sounds right.
So the funniest, I should say funniest, but the most interesting thing, I caught a TV blurb, and they were burying a colonel. He was cremated. So here they bring this coffin on a caisson. They got a little door in the back, and they open this door up. They bring this
Urn.
Urn. It's actually a little box, I guess.
Yeah.
And they bury it. It's sort of, it's fascinating from a perspective of, you always see, the royal military funerals and everything else. But now, again, they're running out of bugle players because they don't know how to play the bugle. Most of them now come out with a trumpet.
Yeah, not at Arlington, they don't, but in other and civilian cemeteries where former military personnel, veterans are being buried, and they don't have people.
Tom can play the bugle. Matter of fact, I kicked out of a Boy Scout meeting one time because of that.
Yes,
of all places.
But
But that's another story.
Many other instruments.
A friend of mine was died. He was buried. I forgot what the cemetery was. It was a civilian cemetery, and they had bugle player, and they had.
There's a guy that has an organization called Bugles Across America that tries to get bugle players for veterans' funerals.
Yeah,
Well,
this was colder than hell, though.
well, we will have to hold on that thought because it's time for another break.
We'll be right back after these messages of interest and importance.
That's right from.
Exhibitors Carpet Service has changed their name to Carpet Warehouse at 4300 West Montrose Avenue in Chicago, and their new location at 440 North Sheridan Road in Highwood, Illinois, called Carpet of Highwood. Stop in at Carpet Warehouse at 4300 West Montrose Avenue, and their phone number is area code 773-283-0100, or at 440 North Sheridan Road in Highwood, Illinois. And their phone number is area code 847-266-1400. For carpets in your living room, dining room, bedroom, den, or family room, stop in at either location for a great deal. Once again, Carpet Warehouse, 4300 West Montrose Avenue, phone number area code 773-283-0100 in Chicago, or Carpet of Highwood at 440 North Sheridan Road, and that phone number is area code 847-266-1400. Remember, if you need a carpet for your living room, dining room, bedroom, den, or family room, stop in at 4300 West Montrose Avenue in Chicago. Again, their phone number is area code 773-283-0100, or at 440 North Sheridan Road in Highwood, Illinois, and their phone number is area code 847-266-1400 for a great deal on carpeting.
Now, back to our special holiday edition of Meet the Chicago Historians. Jack?
Yes, sir. We're here and we're celebrating Christmas and Christmas season and any other different holidays that you may can think of. We had already had Hanukkah go by us, so which I understand isn't as big a feast as maybe people may think. Festival of the Lights, but we can do that in another show. Okay, before we get on to Christmas, we haven't mentioned our mayor here in the Chicago, so we could probably fill another whole show with that stuff, couldn't we, gentlemen? Don't you think so?
Excuse me. Our mayor and police superintendent had another press conference to pat themselves on the back about how they've reduced crime in Chicago.
Have they?
I don't. The 20 people that were shot over the weekend, 3 of them dead, weren't invited to the conference. So, I wonder why.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like this is like 1984. You know,
Yeah.
20 people dead, and you hold a press conference to tell everyone how great the police department is doing. And you know, as a former Chicago police officer, you know, I'd love to say, hey, things are really great, but if you live in some of the communities in the city of Chicago, things aren't great.
Well, what's that old saying we used to hear about, and I was on the job, Tom and I, about the same length of time, over 30 years, 34 years. And, of course, when you come on, you're very susceptible to the propaganda, not thinking a citizen should have a gun. No citizen should have guns, only the police. But then again, as you go on, you find out it's better to be caught with it than without it because the bad guys got the guns. And but another thing is how much actual reduction of any kind of a crime are police departments responsible for?
Well, you know, you touched on the gun thing. Let me just talk about that for a second. You know, if I was as anti-handgun as some of the people are in the city, our mayor being one of them, why, and I mean, this is I think a question that should be addressed, if you are really, seriously, truly anti-handgun, why are you being driven around the city of Chicago by Chicago police officers that are carrying handguns? I mean, seriously. I mean, this isn't a joke. If you are seriously, truly anti-handgun, why are you surround yourself and your family with people that carry handguns? If you don't need them and shouldn't have them, I mean, wouldn't it be a great thing for our mayor to stand up and say, you know what, I'm against handguns, and it's going to start with me. Starting tomorrow, I am not going to be guarded by police officers with handguns. I'm going to be driven by civilians or hired security personnel that are unarmed to lead the way, to show you that I'm so adamant about against handguns that I'm not going to be around them. Wouldn't that be great?
That's as far as same thing with the school system. He sent his kids to private schools because the fact is that our school system doesn't work.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that during the campaign. Now, these ads, it's like one of these where the candidates are like looking off into space, commenting about how things are for people in certain neighborhoods to go to school, like as if he's ever experienced any such a thing in his life.
But the thing is, what he basically is saying is, you know what, I have armed security because I think that my life is precious, my family's life is precious, so I am almost constantly accompanied by Chicago police officers that are armed with handguns.
Gee, I wonder who-
but you can't have one. Your family can't.
Doesn't count.
You know, I don't want an average citizen walking around with a handgun, but I want to stand next to someone that carries a handgun to protect me. I mean, does the word hypocrite come to mind?
Who?
Yeah, well, obviously what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander in this case.
Well, let's go to the Christmas show.
Christmas. Okay, our favorite time. Okay, memories of Christmas when we were younger.
Marshall Fields.
Marshall
The
Field.
windows?
The windows in Marshall Fields. They haven't been the same since
Not quite.
been sold out, and they sold out
No.
several times.
Marshall Field was not a law enforcement man
Nope.
or a ruler. He was
His
merchant.
His son, Marshall Field III, was sort of funny.
But this is
He was
Hey,
killed. He was
let-
killed
just
in
let
Everly sisters' little bungalow.
Before we get too deep into this, I've got to say that first of all, I am amazed that we are actually saying the word Christmas because it's
politically incorrect,
everyone
I
is
know.
well. I have a short list of some Christmas songs here that actually I'm going to give you the politically incorrect version or the standard version first, and then I'm going to tell you what the new acceptable version
the
is.
true version versus
Right.
the.
Well, let's start off with probably the most famous Christmas song of all time. I'm Dreaming of a White Christmas. That is no longer acceptable. The new term and the new title for the song is I'm Dreaming of a Non-Color Specific Major Holiday in December. The next one I'd like to talk about is a popular song, I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. We can't have that anymore. But what is acceptable is I Saw Daddy Kissing Santa Claus, or I saw my two mommies kissing a member of the LGBT community dressed in red outfits. Now let's go to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This is totally and absolutely completely unacceptable. I mean, there is no acceptable term for this song. Rudolph was a bullying victim of Dasher and Dancer's gang of bullying reindeer. The words to the song, they laughed and called him names. They wouldn't allow Rudolph to play in their reindeer games. I mean, this is totally and completely unacceptable. So, in the interest of the anti-gang and anti-bullying initiatives, I won't mention this again. Now, chestnuts roasting on an open fire, the actual name of that song is A Christmas Carol, but most people know it as chestnuts roasting on an open fire. In the future, it will be chestnuts roasting on an environmentally approved heating device. Now, any religious song, that's completely unacceptable, as long as it doesn't refer to Christ, Jesus, the Virgin Mary, angels, God, the manger, or anything with any reference whatsoever to the bigoted Christian holiday of Christmas. The little drummer boy, the rap artist formerly known as the Little Drummer Boy, now known as Drum Man B, they changed the title. It's Laying It Down for the Dude in the Crib. Now, the 12 days of Christmas, due to the sequestration, it's no longer 12 days. It's been reduced to a week. And all gifts must be environmentally approved. No endangered species may be given as gifts. Lords can still leap if they are members of the LGBT community. And drummers may continue to drum only if they are non-white and playing on 5-gallon environmentally safe buckets. And finally, Frosty the Snowman will now be called Frosty the Snow Person. And the line that he led them down the streets of town right to the traffic cop and only paused a moment when he heard him holler, "Stop." This is a classic case of snowman profiling by the police department. Why, he said, they picked on a poor, innocent snowman and then hollered at him. Obviously, snowman profiling and verbal abuse on the part of the police department. So this will also be unacceptable. Now, having said that, let's see if we can have the conversation now and not use any of these terms, please.
Well, goodbye, folks.
Good night. See you next year.
Well,
Very
the
good.
most interesting thing is what, to be very politically incorrect, Chris Kindlemart down at Daly Center, or whatever you want to call it. They got the menorah up, the A for atheist,
Atheist.
and they have a crutch there for the, I guess I want to call it the manger. And I'm waiting for him to come up with a Muslim symbol that hasn't showed up yet. So to make it a little more altruistic.
Weren't they saying, too, that A stood for agnostics as well as atheists?
Yeah.
I think I know a lot of agnostics who would not want to be associated with atheists.
Well, the
That's-
problem is defining the difference between the two.
Yeah.
But the fact is that people get upset, and the fact was that, according to history, Christ was born in the summer. And it was in the
Spring.
3rd century that whoever the Pope was at the time decided to order to get the non-Christians to conform to the church. They changed it to December. And actually, Christmas was not celebrated until really recently, was resurrected. For a long time, it was sort of passed over as a holiday, and that was about it.
They moved it to December to supersede the Roman feast of Saturnalius or Saturnalia,
I
Somewhat.
heard that, Jack.
and which
Yeah. Connection there.
the winter solstice comes on December 25th in Rome. So they think probably it was born maybe April, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
But it was done. So I mean, celebrating it, you can celebrate any time.
Yeah,
You know,
me.
talking about memories of Christmas, could you imagine, I mean, when we were growing up, if someone said to you, you know what, Tom, in the future, not so distant future, it will be socially unacceptable to wish someone a Merry Christmas. I mean, what would the response be? Could you think that anything like this could ever possibly happen? That, I mean, every card that I get, the major holiday in December card I get from businesses, it's all happy holidays. There's no mention of Christmas.
All I know is when I write a Christmas card, I say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and I don't care what politically correct it is.
Right. Well, I agree. I mean, I think everybody here, we're all on the same page. But obviously, it's gotten through to a lot of people because it's, it's no longer an office Christmas party. It's an office holiday party. I mean, come on.
Well, I look at it, the fact is that Christmas, whether it's secular or religious, is still a holiday, whether you want to go back to Roman times or modern Christian times.
Well, plus the thing is, if I choose to celebrate Christmas, why that doesn't really denigrate any other.
Shouldn't. It shouldn't.
I mean,
No, not at all.
and if someone wants to celebrate, or someone does celebrate Hanukkah, or they want to celebrate Kwanzaa, I mean that's fantastic.
Let 'em do it.
That's fantastic.
Well, the problem comes in now. I'll throw a clinker in there. Is the Muslims decide that, or at least the radical Muslims, they decide that everybody has to be Muslim, and consequently they get highly upset. You go into Europe, and the Muslims want to essentially change the laws to conform to the Muslim laws, and one of the prime ministers there said, if you don't like the way we live, leave. And I think it was Denmark or one of the countries like that. I forgot. Denmark's not that easy to get into because they have very restrictive immigration laws there. But it may have been one of the other more liberal.
But the thing is, I mean, my point is, to celebrate Christmas doesn't mean that you are excluding anyone. I mean, it's
Some people would take it that way,
Right.
but if you think about it a while, no, you're not excluding anybody.
And I mean, I don't know, anyone that really, thinks that.
Well, I know Muslims that will accept a congratulatory Merry Christmas without too much of a problem, as long as you don't berate them if they go out and congratulate for their holidays, or whatever it is, Ramadan or whatever it
But
is.
the thing is, this country is it's a Christian nation. I mean, when you come to this country, and again, you don't have to. I mean, that's what's so great about this country. You don't have to celebrate Christmas if you don't want to. But why do you want to prevent someone else
Right.
from celebrating it?
If I have a neighbor and if there's such a thing, a devout atheist, he can celebrate whatever he wants to celebrate in his own way, or not celebrate. I'm not going to stop him.
I'm not going to walk into a vegetarian restaurant and demand to have a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Because it's a vegetarian
It's about the
restaurant.
same level.
You respect, and
Well, you got to look at it the other way too. Is some of the greatest singers of Christmas songs, and some of the greatest writers of Christmas songs are Jewish.
sure.
Irving Berlin in particular.
Right. Good.
Well, Mel
good
Torme
taste.
wrote that Christmas song you're talking about.
Right.
Chestnuts.
And then a lot of cantors used to
You
sing
mean the
Christmas.
chestnuts roasting on an environmentally protected heating
But-
device?
a lot of cantors used to sing Christmas carols all the time.
One positive development I think most of us remember a few years ago, literally taking Christ out of Christmas, we refer to the day as Xmas.
Right.
I don't think we've seen that much anymore. You certainly don't hear it. You don't see it much in print.
Xmas.
X-M-A-S.
Xmas is a
More of a
Greek-
shorthand, maybe?
No, it's a Greek term.
Really?
It actually shows Christ as somewhere in the Greek language. The X fits in that category, so consequently it comes in there. I think Zai is actually the Greek pronunciation of it, and it is acceptable to use the X for Christmas. It's
That
a
goes
short-
back
it
a long
it's a
hasn't
short-
caught on, though. That's
No,
thank
it's
God
just
for
it's a
that.
shorthand way of doing things. Though.
Yeah.
Well, along the same lines, it's gone from BC and AD to before Common Era and Common Era CE. And I even saw it in some Christian publications. You think they really stick to the old way? It served us well for 2,000 years, right? Before Christ and
the problem-
Anno Domini, Year of Our Lord. That means,
Yeah, no, right. You see that a lot before the Common Era.
yeah, that's. I saw it in some publications. Some Catholic outfit had them. What is this? Don't they think about this? Who put the imprimatur on this one? Imprimatur, one of some big shot. I'll give you. Neil Abstadt meant let it be printed. Some archbishop had put his John Hancock and Neil and imprimatur. Put your imprimatur on this. You're you're
it's
endorsing
John-
it, right?
I thought it was John Hancock.
Who?
John Hancock on it.
Well, that too. Put your John Hancock on it, John Hancock.
But again, people that protest the celebration of Christmas as a Christian holiday. I mean, it really. Let's face it. It hasn't really been that much of a Christian holiday in years. I mean, you ask little kids. They did interviews with little kids. What is Christmas? What is the? Well, it's when you get presents and you put up a tree. There's no mention of Christ whatsoever.
Well, you think that's bad, though. You come out there with the Jewish holiday comes on, and they got the menorah coming out, so they get presents 7 days. I guess 7 or 8 days. There's 8 candles on there, and they
Was it 1 week's worth of oil burned for 1 day's worth burned for a whole week or something?
something like
That's
that.
right.
yeah.
Maccabees, right? Wasn't it?
That's right.
I believe.
Well, if you
My
believe it.
apologies to our Jewish friends, our neighbors.
And then again, I deal with a guy. He's a Muslim. He's married to a Christian woman, so he'll say Merry Christmas. He says I celebrate all holidays. You don't care.
It's also, by the way, it just happens to be a legal holiday in the United States, Christmas.
Right.
So I mean, let's not forget that.
Yeah.
So for whatever reason,
Although nowadays you got left stores open, so it don't make a hell of a lot of difference.
but I can remember some of the, and maybe you remember this too, Tom. We're the same age, or he's actually about a month older.
Oh,
So
he's an
I'm the young
old-timer.
dude here.
Oh, gee.
I'm the youngest dude here in the house.
Respect your elders.
This is the oldest.
Around circa 1956, when we were in about 5th grade, I think it was Kresge's at NBC came up with a Kresge's Santa Claus party. Came in late September, early October, for all the time from then until Christmas.
Yeah.
Santa was the host, and Santa would read letters from the kids. Santa would show certain toys, by the way, Of course, it was one thing for my age. My younger sister is 3 years younger. The next one's 2 years younger, and then one younger than him. So one was in kindergarten, 3rd grade, Ma, when's Christmas coming?
Well,
It was still autumn. So I mean, they didn't repeat that. Do you remember that time? I know.
No.
No. Well,
But,
I didn't.
but the one that's was started by a major department store and still sticks around is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Was that Montgomery Ward's? Or?
Montgomery Ward's, and the
Yeah.
one that made it famous was Gene Autry for the
Right.
most part.
The writer was some Albert L. May or something like. He started out with a story for the kids, and then
Yeah.
went to the song.
Yeah, it might have been something like that.
Yeah. Every year, Sears would always have brand new pressed copies of the Gene Autry's Christmas album with that, and Here Comes Santa Claus, and Here comes pressed mammal. What is Rudolph again?
Oh, Rudolph, we weren't supposed to talk about that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You mean Rudolph and the gang of bullying Dancer and Prancer, the bullying reindeer gang?
Good old German.
Wouldn't let poor Rudolph play in any of their reindeer games.
Yeah.
Call them names. I mean, that's outrageous.
Well, you got the Germans in there, Dunder and Blitzen.
Yeah, they were. But
Or is there another sense in which Santa Claus over the years has been used to soften the religious aspects of Christmas?
Oh, sure,
That's,
sure it is.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you actually got the 6th of December, which is St. Nicholas Day,
Mm-hmm.
and then you slowly migrated to Christmas itself. So St. Nicholas, he really started. It's sort of a slurring of St. Nicholas going to Santa Claus.
well, in England, he's Father Christmas,
Yeah.
Father Noel in France.
Okay.
So you got different names like that.
I
The old
think it's
Sa-
also Father Noel in Ireland too, or something like that.
What's that?
Ireland's got a different name for it too. I think it's Noel or something like
St.
that.
Patrick?
St. Patrick. Oh, the old Irishman. Yeah, from Italy.
He was Irish. France, they think.
Oh,
He was a Roman citizen.
Yeah.
Whatever he was.
He was imported by a slave ship.
There was the Santa Claus as we know him. Thomas Nast was a German American, German descent cartoonist in the mid 19th century, and he had his own cell phone, and no, he came up with the what we call the night before Christmas, a visit for Saint Nicholas. He came up with the jolly, chubby, happy elf round, and the reindeer, and it was on one of these woodcut drawings.
Yeah, he used to be green.
And was he?
Yeah, he was green.
Well, you ripen,
Well, no, actually, what it was Coca-Cola.
Well, he Lucky Strike went out. The green went off to war, right? But
Yeah, that too. But
this was in, I believe, it was in the what was the big magazine in the around that
Post,
time?
Saturday.
Life.
No, before that even. There's a bunch of them in this.
Colliers?
Even before that. I know it. I can't think of
Saturday
it.
Life magazine. No.
Saturday Evening Post.
It was even before that, but they. I remember they had
Almanac.
we had a display case of them down in the old library, which now is the Cultural Center. I was about 14, went down to do some work with my sister at Christmas time. And here's the, anyway, I'll think of it by the next show, folks. I hope we get it before this is out. But here was that, the drawing with all the so-and-so, and they very well done, which has to be done, actually cut backwards because it's got to print,
Yeah.
They have to, the artist has to do that. And this had all of the elements in it, the outfit, what it looked like, and he's jolly and oh shoot, I almost had it. But that superseded the prior stern, thin-faced Saint Nicholas that they had. Was before that was thin, tall.
Yeah, that's the European Santa Claus for the most part.
What they had. And where does the name come from? Sinterklaas? Was that a German or Dutch? Which is similar, of course.
Yeah, there's Sinterklaas. There's a few different variations. I'm not sure.
It all sounds like St. Nicholas.
We got a telephone? Oh, we have a phone caller.
Oh,
Where
that's
were you an
different.
hour ago, phone caller? Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, caller.
Well, greetings from beautiful downtown Hawthorne, Illinois.
Oh, we're playing Guess Who Is This, right?
It's good to be. I'm sorry that I can't be with you there in the studio, but I want to wish all of you and those listening a very blessed and Merry Christmas.
It's John Kishelko, our resident politician.
I thought it was the ghost of Ronald Reagan.
Well, that wouldn't be a bad
Right.
role to
I
fill.
know. An honor.
The Ghost of Christmas Past.
Right.
Thanks for calling in, John. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry
Christmas,
and
John.
a very joyous Christmas season. Enjoy the 12 days of Christmas.
Do you have any fond memories of Christmas when you were a kid, or?
I guess one of my favorites was on Sunday afternoons, usually the Sunday or maybe the second Sunday before Christmas. Fraser Thomas on Family Classics would run the 1938 version of A Christmas Carol with Reginald Owen, and I would always look forward to seeing that in more recent years. Not as a child, that was more in more recent years. Back when my mom and dad had a grocery business, I'd be helping my dad on that Sunday, but I was always entitled to a break for an hour and a half to 2 hours to watch A Christmas Carol.
Was that Gene Lockhart as?
Gene Lockhart as Bob Cratchit.
So this was the MGM, wasn't it?
It's sometimes referred to as the MGM version. It was made in '38. His real wife and his daughter June Lockhart played his wife and daughter in the film.
Who was his real wife? Was she an actress, obviously?
I can't think of her first name, but they're all there as the Lockharts in the credits to the film. And Leo G. Carroll plays Marley's ghost.
Mm-hmm. Now, there was quite a versatile actor there, Leo G. Carroll, drama or comedy or whatever, you know. Yeah.
Well, it was originally supposed to be Lionel Barrymore was supposed to play the part of Scrooge because he had made that role his own on radio during the 1930s, and consequently, it was a big thing that Hollywood was going to bring him to the silver screen, and then he contracted his illness, which eventually would put him in a wheelchair.
Rheumatoid arthritis.
And so he had to bow out of the film, and he recommended his friend Reginald Owen to play the part of Scrooge.
Well, he was his Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life is sort of a Scrooge, isn't he?
That's right. I mean, it's very much the same role that he was associated with. It was the Campbell Soup Company would have a Christmas Eve special every year in which Lionel Barrymore would play the part of Ebenezer Scrooge. And it was so well known that Hollywood thought they would capitalize on this and put him in the film. But right at that critical point, he developed his illness, and of course, as Mr. Potter, of course, he's in a wheelchair. So.
Well, he did that too. He's in films in a wheelchair. The Dr. Gillespie series.
Oh, sure.
He's Dr. Kildare. I mean, he's Dr. Gillespie.
But as Scrooge, it just wouldn't have been true to the role to have had him in that part. Have him.
Any other versions you rate highly? Or
well, it's interesting, about 10, 20 years ago, you invariably see the 1951 English version.
With Alistair Sim.
That's right.
Great? Yeah.
That was a very enjoyable movie. I don't know if I have ever seen the Reginald Owen one in its entirety.
The Reginald Owen film is sometimes described as a brighter version of the film because it's black and white.
Right.
But it is Hollywood, so they make it, and that makes it in some ways a more enjoyable story because it is a brighter, more Christmassy story.
I loved Alastair Sim's portrayal of Scrooge.
And that's usually referred to as the finest screen version of A Christmas Carol, and I love that one as well. I love when he's finally seen the light, and he's rewarded Bob Cratchit.
He's teasing Bob Cratchit at the end, just pretending he's this miserable old miser. Then all of a sudden he breaks into laughing.
I'm not going to stand for this anymore, and therefore, I'm going to raise your salary.
Right.
But when Cratchit leaves, he looks at himself and he says, I don't deserve to be this happy. And he tosses the quill pen over his shoulder. And I've always loved that scene in there. He's so happy that he just tosses his quill pen out the window.
They don't seem to be showing either version much on TV lately. Maybe it was a little overkill some years ago, like It's a Wonderful Life.
You know, WTTW would always run the Alistair Sim version. For many years, they would run that on Christmas Eve. But they stopped doing that a long time ago.
That's right.
And I think it's sad because to me that is the premier Christmas story. It's been described as the second greatest Christmas story ever told. With
you know what that means,
right? To the one that
next to Santa Claus defeats the Martians, or what is that one?
I couldn't hear that.
Can you hold on a few seconds? We're going to go to a break. Can you hang on, John?
Sure.
Ready for a break, John?
Sure.
We'll be right back after these messages of interest and importance.
Well, friends, guess what? Winter is here, and your roof is full of ice and snow, and it won't be long, and it'll start to melt, and you want to make sure that you don't have drip, drip, drip on your ceilings, or you have any mildew or mold in your crawl space or attic. And if you experience any kind of moisture inside your home, call Best Brothers Roofing at area code 630-616-1359. Mike Besh will drive over in his shiny red truck with ladders on top and Best Brothers Roofing signs on the door, and he will take a look at your roof, siding, or gutters and give you an estimate and go from there. Now, once again, you don't want to have double expense. Not only are you going to have to get the roof, gutters, or sidings repaired on your home, but you don't want to have to replace the ceilings in your living room, bedroom, dining room, kitchen, or wherever. So once again, now that the winter weather is here and we have ice, snow, and whatever on the roof, when it starts to melt, keep your eye open and make sure that you don't have wet ceilings or have mold or mildew in your crawl space or your attic. So call Best Brothers Roofing at area code 630-616-1359. And once again, Mike Besh will drive over in a shiny red truck with ladders on top and Best Brothers Roofing signs on his doors, and he'll take a look at it, give you an estimate, and go from there. So for a complete roof, gutters, and siding, it's Best Brothers Roofing, and his number again is 630-616-1359. Best Brothers Roofing and Gutters and Siding at 630-616-1359. Call today for a free estimate.
Our special Christmas program of Meet the Chicago Historians. Jack?
You get fined for saying Christian almost there. Anyway, Clancy, our studio cop here, has to get everyone seated. We have too many, a large crowd today, plus the audience. But before earlier, John, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
The magazine I was trying to think of earlier, they had the original Visit from St. Nicholas was Harper's.
Oh, yes.
Harper's goes back to before Civil War. I know.
Harper's in the middle of the 19th century.
Right.
Yeah, Thomas Nast.
Yeah, Thomas Nast. Thomas Nast. A lot of those seem like those early pioneers in that area were German. Wilhelm Busch was the one who did the Katzenjammer. Ahead of them, the one that they kind of based on was Maxwell Moritz, which was a big thing in Germany, in our German-speaking areas. And then, of course, Rudolf Dirks, the son of German immigrants from Chicago, started the Katzenjammer Kids.
Right.
Which isn't exactly Christmas, but a little footnote.
Well, the other thing about the way Santa Claus developed is that in Clement Moore's Visit from St. Nicholas, he's a tiny guy. They refer to him in the poem as being a tiny elf.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time you get to Thomas Nast, around the year of the Civil War, he's not completely full size, but he's bigger than the tiny elf described in Clement Moore's poem.
It was probably due to steroids or something like that.
Well, you don't really get our image. The odd thing, many people don't realize, our image of the full size jolly Santa Claus really comes from the Coca-Cola Company. There was a man named Haddon Sundblom who was the cartoonist for Coca-Cola, and every year he would do illustrations for Coke at Christmas time.
Right.
And he really gave the classic American image of Santa Claus as the big, jolly Saint Nick that we associate with the way in which he's portrayed in A Miracle on 34th Street or the Santa Claus. All the other portrayals of Santa Claus really draw on Coca-Cola's creation of him as a full-size figure.
There's also a fact they gave him the red suit. Before that, it was different colors.
Well, depending on seasons. It goes on. There's a Christmas Island, right, somewhere?
John, what are your thoughts about the custom of exchanging Christmas cards? Was that basically started in England? I'm going to say the 1820s or 30s.
That's Victorian. I did a column years ago for the newspaper about how so much of our Christmas is really 19th century in its origin. The Christmas card originated in Victorian England. The very first card simply said, "A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year."
Thanks,
And you really can't improve upon that.
Didn't they start out as postcards first?
Yes, they were in the form of sort of a postal card that was first sent out. I think it was in the 1840s. And, of course, Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol was written in 1843. Jingle Bells, which is one of the most famous American Christmas songs, was written in 1857. Yes, Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus. That was, I think, in 1897 with the New York
Correct.
Sun.
Correct.
So,
It was on the
many of
we
the,
would
of
call
the customs and traditions really, they don't go back hundreds and hundreds of years. They really go back to the 19th century in many cases.
Well, that you mentioned that yes, Virginia, there's a Santa Claus. That was on what we would call today an op-ed page in
Right.
New York Sun.
The New York Sun.
and the guy who wrote it didn't get any credit for it at the time, but that's the most reproduced op-ed or editorial that there is
Yes,
ever.
Virginia, there
There
is
was
a
a-
Santa
yeah.
Claus.
Francis
Yeah.
P. Church was the editor that responded to her.
Yeah, we used to go there on Sundays sometimes during the summer.
Oh, jeez.
Sometimes go to his place of worship.
Ha ha.
Even the Christmas tree really became prevalent in the United States in the 19th century because that was originated really by Queen Victoria when her German
Wasn't that
husband
German?
Prince Albert.
No, actually, it was Prince Albert that did that.
That's
because-
right. Her
that would
husband
make- that
was
makes
German,
sense,
Prince
yeah.
Albert. He erected a Christmas tree I think at Windsor Castle, and when it was illustrated in one of the magazines at that time, naturally everyone wanted to have what the royal family had. The aristocracy wanted to have one of these too, and then the middle class wanted to have what the aristocracy had. So everyone wanted to copy what the royal family had with this new custom of the Christmas tree.
And the Yule log that predates Christianity, doesn't it? A Yule
Oh yeah,
log?
that goes way
Yuletide?
back. Yeah, that's
Wasn't
the
it supposed to
idea
burn
that
how
you,
long?
You save a splinter from this year's log, and then next Christmas you use it to light the new Yule log.
Well, I remember there was a show
Continuity.
on CBS in the 50s, Navy Log. Was that anything to do with
no,
No?
not quite the same.
No?
I think that may have been a different format.
A different log, huh?
Yeah,
Those are
that
kind
was
they
a
burn.
form of log rolling, I think.
I think a lot of us remember, well, through the 1950s, you would display a Christmas tree. It was a natural tree cut down in the forest. Then around 1960, you got all of a sudden these aluminum trees
No,
everywhere
it was earlier. Well, the
with the
flock tree-
spotlights.
The flock trees
Which
came
is,
out.
it's almost. I think aluminum trees are almost non-existent today.
You're right.
But they live again every year in a Charlie Brown Christmas because that was made in 1965 when they were very prevalent. And so every year, I think young kids probably hear this reference to aluminum Christmas trees. And they wonder, well, what's that? We don't have aluminum Christmas trees today.
That was Reynolds.
So that's
aluminum.
a kind of a custom from that time that's disappeared, but it's preserved through the popularity of a Charlie Brown Christmas.
Well, I remember when I used to help my father put the old Christmas lights, the old big bulbs that would get red hot on the Christmas tree, and he would tell me when he was a young boy that when they put their Christmas tree up, they had these little holders for candles, and they would put the candles all over the tree, and then on Christmas Eve, they would light the candles. They would actually have a couple buckets of water standing by in case one of the candles tipped over in the tree. We all know how fast those trees can go up in flames, and the candles would last maybe 15, 20 minutes, and that was it. But that was the big celebration, sitting there and watching the lit tree with actual candles.
My uncle was a fireman. He was a great believer you should have it up and take it down right away, just for that very reason.
I remember when I was a kid, up to about, I was 8 or 9, the kids in the neighborhood used to get all the trees, bring them over to this lot on Sacramento and Addison there. And I think it was probably 10, 15 feet high. Somebody put a couple potatoes at the bottom. They wanted to roast potatoes, and they lit it off. And it actually buckled the paint on the porch. It was about 50 feet away. And the flock trees came in. That was a killer of that. So that phlox came in about 1950 or so.
Oh, that early.
Yeah. And that sort of killed the whole thing.
Yeah.
My favorite radio story about Christmas is it concerns a Christmas tree, and it's Jack Benny Yeah, on his radio show, and he's bringing his inebriated band leader, Phil Harris, into his home to see his Christmas tree, and he's bragging about it. And Harris says, well, Jackson, let's see this Christmas tree of yours. And Benny says, well, you see, I went out and I got it isn't it a beautiful tree? I went out and picked it out myself and brought it home. And Harris says, well, where'd you get this tree, Jackson? And Mary Livingston says, from the lobby of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel.
Oh, it's always
well,
funny.
Mary, they had two of them. They didn't need two in the lobby.
That's good.
Well, Phil Harris is always considered alcoholic, but he, from what I understand, he never drank.
No.
He always, it's like
Played
Dean
part of the
Martin.
act.
Dean Martin
Yeah.
was
It was part of his image.
Yeah.
Frank Remley, I think, was the drinker. In the old days, too, wasn't it a good price for a Christmas tree? $2 to $3.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now I bet you're pushing $100.
If you're lucky.
yeah.
That's a cheap small one.
Well, you know, in the movie The Bishop's Wife, which is another one of my favorite Christmas movies with Cary Grant, and Lorraine
David
Young,
Niven, right?
David Niven.
Yeah.
You remember when the professor, the professor who's sort of an agnostic or an atheist, he's haggling with the Italian storekeeper over the Christmas tree. And I think he agrees to pay him 10 cents a branch. 10 cents a branch for this little tree that he picked out. So it gives you an idea how much different prices were in the 1940s from what they are today.
In that film, A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, there's a big scene about waiting, like Christmas Eve, when they're getting rid of the last trees, they're just tossing them out to the people who couldn't afford it. And the girl either caught one or something, hung onto it, and took them home with her.
Well, I remember, too, that when we were paying 3 cents postage into the 50s, you could mail an unsealed Christmas card for just 2 cents.
I seem to recall
At least
this.
for a while.
I seem to recall this when I was a kid. I remember my mother saying something about that.
Yeah,
You didn't
and then
seal
we
the
would frequently have twice-a-day deliveries on mail.
Yes.
And now they're going to cut out Saturdays, probably.
I can remember when they would even deliver on Sundays, like the Sunday before Christmas, they would deliver.
Well, that's interesting.
Well, they're delivering to, understanding such
Packages.
a big outpour of mail. They delivered. They're going to deliver this Sunday and the Sunday before Christmas.
Yeah.
Primarily packages, I
Right, they
think
did
more.
that
Packages,
Sunday,
I
yes.
think, this time.
And there would be a second delivery, as you say.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard Canada just stopped their mail service. Is that true? Anybody
certain
hear that?
areas, certain
Don't
areas.
think that's possible with the
certain
international
areas
mail
they stopped.
situation.
They stopped. They put up community mail boxes, I guess we put it, which a lot of rural areas have here in the area too.
Yeah, I think I heard that maybe in a few years they'll be stopping individual home delivery of mail.
Yeah,
Like they do in some developments now, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you'll have to go maybe once a block, you'll have a pickup station, something like that.
You're talking about the radio shows and different programs that were on the radio. Let's not forget the Cinnamon Bear.
Oh, right.
That used to be from right after Thanksgiving up until just a couple
I
days
had a
before
cinnamon
Christmas.
bear ornament on my tree.
Wow.
And it was always broadcast on WGN radio at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Series.
And it was sponsored by Weebolt's, the Weebolt's department store. And if you went to Weebolt's to the Christmas display department and picked up a coloring book and you colored it, you take it back and then you could win a prize. And my sister won first prize about 2 years in a row for her excellence in the coloring book. And right now, on our wonderful station here in Norwich, WRHS, FM 89.7, who carries our show, every day Kevin has been playing parts of the Cinnamon Bear. So yes, so the other night when I was coming home, of course I listened to the station and I hear the Cinnamon Bear, and it really brings back the old memories.
It's the Cinnamon Bear.
Yeah,
Patio Cinnamon.
Patio Cinnamon.
Yeah.
And the dragon, what was it?
Crazy Quilt Dragon.
Yeah,
Quilt
crazy.
Dragon.
Yep.
What was it all?
Was it Wintergreen Witch?
And then they're looking for the star,
Yeah.
The Silver Star.
the
Now,
silver star.
that radio program in the 50s, and Tom and myself in our era, they took a puppet, like a film puppet show, using that soundtrack. We used the sound, but acting it out. Remember that on TV? Cinnamon Bear.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
Well, Take
You
my word
mentioned
for it.
That was after my
Weebles. You
time,
know,
I
we
guess.
have Montgomery Wards to thank for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
Yeah, we talked
Sounds
about
right.
that. We
Yeah,
were
yeah.
Gene Autry's the one that really pushed it over the top, though.
He didn't want to do it, but his wife talked him into doing it. She thought it would be a great song for him, and he finally relented, and it became, I think, the second biggest record after White Christmas for many, many years.
Well, oddly enough, he didn't want to do Back in the Saddle again either.
Is
That became his
right?
trademark, you know. So
My God.
It's
Back
interesting
in
how
the
frequently we
time.
still hear Bing Crosby's White Christmas.
Yeah.
That's really a standard. It hasn't
Oh, every year.
changed
that's-
over time at all.
That's
Whereas
it was
Rudolph, not so much.
It was the Oscar winner for 1942
Right.
for
for
The movie Holiday
Inn.
Yeah.
right, not White Christmas.
No, White Christmas, I think, came out in *54 with Danny Kaye.
Yeah.
as
Right.
Bing Crosby.
I always
Not quite
think
as
That's
good
a
movie.
great
There
film,
were-
and you don't see that as much on television anymore either.
Right.
I mean,
Saw
that
last
is a
weekend.
classic.
This
Christmas
is saw this
movie.
past weekend.
Yeah,
Was it White Christmas?
it was
yeah, White
AMC, I know,
Christmas.
American
Yeah.
Movie Channel.
Vera Ellen with the
That-
narrow
that-
waist was the...
Vera Ellen, who was terrific with Rosemary Clooney.
And those legs that wouldn't quit.
There was a time when NBC would run that every year on Christmas Day. That would be their 8 o'clock movie on Christmas Day.
Then there was the era of all the Christmas specials, Andy
Sure.
Williams, Tennessee Ernie Ford. Those are past now, too.
Well, they don't have
Yeah,
any variety
Bob
shows
Hope,
anyway,
you know,
really,
Bob
speak of.
Hope and Bing Crosby would
Oh,
each
sure.
have a
Yeah.
Christmas
The
special.
Osmonds,
Carol
I think the Osmonds had one too.
Yeah, Carol Burnett. She was always good.
Oh, yeah.
I've always wondered if White Christmas was supposed to be a Bing Crosby, Bob Hope vehicle originally. Could very easily have been done, would seem.
I mean, like the road shows?
Yeah, kind of, you know. Couldn't you
It
see?
would have fit, but of course they had the fact of having the greatest singer and the greatest dancer in the movies together by having Fred Astaire in the original
Holiday
Holiday
Inn, yeah.
And Fred Astaire was supposed to do White Christmas, but I think there was a scheduling conflict. He was under contract to do another movie, and that's why Danny Kaye wound up filling in.
Yeah.
But it was supposed to be a repeat of Fred Astaire in the movie White Christmas.
A little bit off the topic, but remember for a long while, every New Year's Eve you could count on a great Fred Astaire Ginger Rogers musical being shown.
Oh, and they
you don't
would
see
run
those
for that
anymore.
whole
Like
first
Top
week.
Hat.
Oh, I would love watching those. They'd come on about midnight on Channel 7,
Yeah.
They'd do them all night long.
Yeah.
and they'd have Follow the Fleet and Shall We Dance and Swing Time, all the great movies.
You know,
that
why
made.
did they stop that, I wonder?
I really don't know. It was great. I mean, it was those. They seemed to fit the winter, New Year's. It just seemed to be appropriate for that
Right.
time.
Some years they did Marx Brothers all night long, too, I remember.
Yeah.
That's true. That was a little more recent, I think, on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Fred Astaire was a perfectionist. They used to be able to stop at exactly the same spot every time when he finished dancing.
Yeah.
He'd mark it right on the,
Yeah.
you know. But I don't know how much he practiced it was another story.
I know we've seen him all our life. He was a strange-looking dude in a way, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Real thin and
Well, he was a little bit like Frank Sinatra, too, when he was younger.
That's interesting.
Well, the story is that when they made Holiday Inn, Irving Berlin thought that the big hit song was going to be the Valentine's Day song, which is "Be Careful, It's My Heart." It was Bing Crosby who thought that White Christmas was really the best song in the movie, and he turned out to be the one that was right. But Berlin was insisting. He thought that the Valentine song was going to be the signature piece from that film.
And you barely hear that.
No one
So
even
did that.
remembers it
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Irving Berlin did the music for the Coconuts, Marx Brothers show, which was made into a movie.
Oh, the Coconuts,
Yeah, the only
Captain
musical
Swallow.
of his that did not have a hit. You know what they cut out of there? Always. I'll be loving you always was cut
that
out of that
right?
show. Yeah, and then they had it. Of course, they did it in. They used it a lot in Pride of the Yankees. Remember?
Well, the
Oh,
other
yeah.
one that they
yeah,
almost
yeah,
cut out.
Right.
Cut out was Somewhere Over the Rainbow with Judy
Yeah.
Garland. They
That was
almost cut-
controversial, yeah.
That was almost
They didn't
almost
want
cut
an
out.
MGM start singing in a barnyard. Sounds absurd, doesn't it? No.
But anyways, that was the biggest hit of the movie, and they were going to cut it.
Well, you never know. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So,
He probably thought, it's off to see the
hey,
Wizard.
I
of
want to ask you,
Wizard of Oz.
before you get on, John, I remembered something that no one else here, maybe you would know. You're a couple of years younger than us. 1956, around there, I think it was Kresge did a show on NBC afternoons called Kresge's Santa Claus Party.
Oh, I have no recollection
Well,
of
it
that.
started like in September, October, because my kids, my younger brother and sister, saying to my mother and dad, "When's Christmas? When's Christmas?" But they never repeated it. I guess maybe I'm delusional. I'll find it somewhere.
Well, Kresge was sort of funny because he would not allow the stores to be open on Sunday.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't allow liquor to be sold. When he died, the stores opened on Sunday. And then when Kmart came into existence, which is the successor, sold liquor.
Well,
But not all of them do. But, you know, they do
You know,
some.
Bing Crosby did one more movie that had kind of a Christmas theme. It was also the last time he portrayed a priest. It was called Say One for Me.
Mm-hmm.
It was made around 1959 or 1960, and that was a film that would regularly be run at Christmas time. But again, it's a film you don't even see today. I haven't seen
Going
it in
My
years.
Way, because it ends on Christmas Eve, remember? Going My Way?
That's right.
Oh, we got to quit those Irish songs.
Then there was an early Frank Sinatra movie called Miracle of the Bells they were showing for a while.
Oh yes.
What's that about?
I don't think
anyway?
I've seen that, but I've heard about that film, read about it.
Can't think of any other star beside. It was one of Frank's mid-40s era movie, yeah.
The early Frank Sinatra, when he wore the big bow ties and the double-breasted suits.
And those big ears with the skinny. Then, of course, in recent years now, and it's, 20 or 30 years old now, Christmas Story, the Gene Shepard story with the little guy, the kid that wants the BB gun for
I
Christmas.
must confess, I saw that film once and never wanted
seen
to
it?
see it again. I don't understand the appeal of that film. It just doesn't do it.
I think it's a real period
is that
piece.
the one
or
with the
something.
leg lamp?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's become a kind of a iconic thing in films now, with the leg,
Yeah.
the lamp, made out of a leg.
The house they filmed in Cleveland is now like a little museum of its sort there.
Well, the other one that's coming up as a museum now, they rediscovered Walt Disney House on Trip. They decided they want to restore that or something of that order, but it's going to cost $350,000. I think it
It's
was.
a mere bag of shells.
I know it's not.
Very
take
small
a look
house.
Take a look at some of the people that are talking about. They can afford it.
Yeah, let them, as I say.
You know, Walt Disney studio itself can. That's just chump change for them.
That's right. That'd be one, maybe one lunch break on one of his big productions or something.
Yeah, but his father built that from plans his mother drew.
No,
Okay.
that's interesting.
Yes,
I
John.
think Home Alone is a more recent Christmas movie. I think that's a great Christmas film.
Oh, the other one that's sort of funny about Home Alone 2 was filmed here in Chicago as it being in New York.
And of course, let's remember Guy Lombardo used to play at the Waldorf Astoria
Oh, yeah.
on
The big New Year's Eve.
on New Year's Eve.
Right.
Yeah,
New Year's Eve was Guy Lombardo,
What was his band's name?
The Royal
the
Canadian.
Royal
the
Canadian.
Royal
Yeah.
Canadian.
Did you know he was a very expert speedboat racer?
No,
In addition to-
no, did not.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you know that, Tom?
No.
Anybody?
Yeah, I did.
Okay,
yeah,
so somebody can bet.
Yeah, he
owned
was-
all kinds of records on that. So, not
What-
playing records, but
Was Carmen Lombardo a vocalist? I'm not sure.
That's right. He was noted for that song "Boo Hoo."
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
He would Carmen. In fact, even in
You
later
got me
years,
crying
he
for
would,
you.
on the TV specials, Carmen would, when that song became popular again, when Tony Randall did a version of it in the '60s,
Yeah.
Carmen would reprise it on the New Year's Eve specials.
Hunts Hall does it in Dead End, you know.
Why doesn't one of the stations rerun Guy Lombardo on New Year's Eve? Unless
Oh,
it's
I
some
wish they
copyright
would.
issue, I don't know.
That would be great.
You know.
No, because they have that a rock or something or another that comes
Or
on.
the Dick Clark
Yeah,
sort of thing?
Yeah, because that's right after Guy Lombardo went off the air. They had Dick Clark. What was that, John? A rock about something or another.
Rockin' New Year's Eve.
Something like that. Yeah.
When my mom lived in New York
I
City,
turn- I
when she
usually
was-
turn New
was
Year's
young,
Eve
she
off
met-
now
she was
because
at
of
the
the noise.
hotel. I think it was at the Roosevelt Hotel that he played.
See, look at
Who was that, John?
My mom met Guy Lombardo and got a program autographed by Guy Lombardo, Carmen Lombardo, all the stars of his band.
Yeah, but Guy Lombardo played at the Waldorf Astoria.
For New Year's Eve,
Yeah.
he was at the Wall.
Yeah.
But I think he may have also been at the Roosevelt
Yes, he was.
during the rest of the year.
Yes, he was.
there seems to be a curse with this New Year's Eve thing. Guy Lombardo's gone. Dick Clark's gone.
Yeah.
There's old age.
Yeah, is this going to? Well, I don't know. Is this the first New Year's Eve, or was he already gone last year at New Year's Eve?
I think he was gone last year.
He didn't do it for a couple of years because he had the strokes or whatever.
Yeah,
They cut his part way back, I know, for a while.
Yeah,
He couldn't
after he had
speak.
the
He had a
stroke,
hard time speaking.
But he was still there. He would still be there up in the booth.
And by the way, Tom and I went to school with Charlie Lombardo. He's gone too now.
Did Mom took care of him?
No relation.
Well, you don't know.
The Mom took care of him?
Yeah, the name Lombardo sort of has mob connotations, I think.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that isn't fair.
No.
The first machine gun killing in Chicago was done by two Irish gangs around 63rd and Maplewood too. I saw I can't think of the names now, but so I just thought I'd get plug in for our gangs too. Our gang, you know.
Not
You
just
guys,
Machine Gun Jack McGurran.
There were some German gangs, weren't there? Weren't a lot of those guys in the St. Valentine's Massacre?
Also
German
were
boys?
Irish and Italian, but there's a Jewish mob too out there.
Yeah.
But it's always funny. Jaime Weiss was not his real name.
Or Earl Wojciechowski or something like that. The Polish.
This doesn't
Jaime
sound
Weiss,
right.
yeah.
Where were the Jewish gangs holding out in the Chicago area?
I don't know.
Oh, the Purple Gang from Detroit was a Jewish gang. Purple Gang
Sounds right.
was, yeah.
Okay.
And so was, Murder Incorporated with Siegel.
Bugsy Siegel.
Bugsy Siegel, I don't see
Yeah,
that.
they took care of him down in Las Vegas, wasn't that him?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
he started in New York with him and Meyer Lansky.
Yeah,
That's
Lansky.
in The Godfather. That would have been Hyman Roth in that, the fictionalized version.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see Meyer Lansky died a regular normal death a few years ago.
Really?
A natural death. Yeah.
Well, some of these guys made it, but yeah, it was sort of funny that Bugsy Siegel started Las Vegas and made it what it is, and they took care of him down there.
Yeah. His own boys did.
Yeah.
Remember the movie Bugsy starring
Warren Beatty.
He hated,
Warren Beatty? Yeah.
He
That was a
hated
good
that
movie.
name too.
He did.
Yeah, I think he shot somebody for calling him Bugsy.
John, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I know. In real life, they had he got an eye knocked out from the back, being killed. In The Godfather, their version was Mo Green. He got shot through the glasses. Remember that? Oh, you never seen that, right, John?
I've never seen The Godfather.
Well, you go out and
The
rent it now
gangland
or see
stuff
it.
never had a great deal of interest.
Wow.
Well, you ought to see it once anyway.
It's interesting.
Well, we've
About that
actually
time,
made
isn't
it,
it?
folks.
Yeah.
We were short-handed. We had plenty of topics to talk about. I think we had an interesting show, though, and we all enjoyed, as usual, enjoyed doing it. So on behalf of John Kushelko, are you there, John?
It's good to be with you, even if I can't be in the studio at the John DeVita Broadcast Center.
Hey, John said Norwich today. He gave away the location. Tom McKenna?
I want to wish you all. I hope the remainder of Advent is very blessed for you, and have a very Merry Christmas, and enjoy the Christmas season.
Thank you very much.
Right, I
John.
would
You
like to
too.
echo those sentiments. Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy New Year.
Captain Chemical, Al Lopez.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and take it easy on the ethanol.
And
Your announcer, Rich Lang.
Rich
Merry
Lang,
Christmas to everyone.
John DeVita, our boss. And I want to say Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And remember, history is much more than a book you keep on the shelf.
A happy new year, everybody. A very happy new year.
And on behalf of the staff and management of the John DeVita Broadcast Center, the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, and Ridgewood High School, WRHS FM 89.7, this is John DeVita wishing everyone a very, very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. You have been listening to Meet the Chicago Historians from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Monday, December the 16th, the year 2013. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita. It was produced by Jack Ryan, edited by Stephen Lehman, and engineered by James Rohde. This program was pre-recorded on Monday, December the 16th, the year 2013. Be safe, and thanks for listening.